It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Jason Snell has the week off. Congratulations to his kid graduating from college. But good news, John Gruber of Daring Fireball sits in along with Andy Ihnatko and Christina Warren. And of course, we are going to analyze a week later now what Apple announced with Siri and Apple's new AI, what it really means, where it comes from, how to use it. John's got a lot of experience. He's been using it all week. That's coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 1029, recorded Tuesday, June 16th, 2026. Intimate Functionalities. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show we cover the latest Apple news, and here we are in 1 week out of the reality distortion field, so this is when the actual story begins. Christina Warren is here, developer advocate at GitHub. Hello, Christina.
Hello, Leo.
Christina was on Twit, so she's getting a little overdose of me. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, it's not that. I'm not getting an overdose of you. The audience is getting an overdose of me.
Oh, no, they're happy to see you. No. Don't get that wrong. Also here, from inotco.com. I'm happy to say that. Mr. Andy Ihnatko. Hello, Andrew.
Chief editor at inotco.com. What can I say? I nailed the interview. They said that was a good fit. But I'm on probation for 60 days. So
Jason Snell is out. We had to search far and wide for somebody whose website's been going on longer than yours, Andy. and we found him. John Gruber is here from Daring Fireball, legend. Hello, John. Good to see you.
Hey, welcome.
How are the Yankees
Glad to
doing
be here.
this year?
Excellent.
Okay. So you'll be in a good mood.
Yes.
Just checking. You're not a Knickerbockers fan, though, are you?
No, but I'm happy to see them win. I
you must be a Celtics fan for reals, right?
I've evolved into, it's the one sport where I root for my local team, the Sixers.
Oh, that's right. You're in Philly. What am I thinking? I don't know why. Yes,
but it's how could you not root for the Knicks this year? I don't know. They're a local team.
Although our 22-year-old came upstairs yesterday and said, they're rioting in New York City. I said, no, they're not. That's the celebration. No, they're burning buses.
Well, that's just usually a good thing to say. There's at least a 70% chance you're right that there's someone's writing about something somewhere.
I remember when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, they had to grease the light poles downtown.
Oh, that didn't stop them.
No,
it didn't. It is literally the most useless job in the city of Philadelphia to grease the poles before the Phillies or the Eagles win a championship, because the people who are going to climb them anyway. So what was the point of greasing them?
That's the point.
And also, they're going to, by the time they get back down, they're going to be covered with grease and therefore harder for the police to cuff.
Yeah,
it's a very self-defeating plan.
That's right.
Yeah, and the weird tradition, it comes from South Philly and the Italian-American community, and when they have like holidays where they do it, they have contests. They grease the poles. They train with greased poles.
They have to train. That's right. Very important. John, you were in Cupertino last week. Jason Snell was. I guess he's still there. I don't know. No, he's on vacation. He had a very long briefing.
He'll never return. No, he'll never return.
He'll be back next week. But I'm so glad we could get John here. I watched the talk show. It was exciting. You had Neelay Patel back and Joanna Stern, who is not, I'm happy to say, a robot. And actually, the three of you, or maybe it was you who said it, there is that reality distortion field of when you're in the circle, the force field of what Apple's saying kind of, even without Steve Jobs, encompasses you. But now here we are a week later, and we can kind of absorb and think. What's your take on Apple's AI announcement?
I think they nailed it. I've been using it primarily on a spare iPhone since Monday. I started installing it a week ago, right after the keynote. And it's, 2 years after they initially announced it, the stuff they said would work works.
Because you were let's face it, a little bitter about the announcement 2 years ago. Mad.
I wouldn't say that I was bitter. I try not to.
It was rotten.
Well, I said something is rotten.
No, maybe it was something else. Okay, I just assumed you meant that.
Yeah, but I think that piece holds up.
It does. It does. Yeah.
Great piece.
It's one of the, to me, one of the best things about Apple institutionally is that they, and it does come from Steve Jobs. He wanted to show things when they were finished. And he knew, it just seemed like intuitively that announcing, you're so excited about something when it feels like it's almost done, right? And everybody, I mean, it doesn't matter. Everybody knows this, right? That the first 90% takes half the time and the other 10% takes the other 90% of the time, right? It's the end of finishing anything, a house project, a work project, anything. The end takes more time. And so you're excited because you feel like you're 90% there or 70% there, and you want to tell the world because you feel like, oh, the end's in sight. Let's announce it now. And that's just not the Apple way. They announce things when they are ready to ship. Like, hey, you can buy this next Tuesday, or you can buy that, you can pre-order Friday, or you can download it later today after this keynote. And so the way that they pre-announced what they called Apple Intelligence 2 years ago.
Sorry. I didn't.
Clearly.
I apologize. That was not commentary.
Clearly.
We usually mute the audience mics, but they are loving what you're laying down, man.
Clearly without the end in sight. I mean, and again, do I think they thought it was going to be canceled? No, of course not. They would have to be insane, right? They clearly thought there was some chance that they would be able to ship it on the promised schedule, but they obviously couldn't, and they had to go back to the drawing board. And a lot of the explanation we saw last week at WWDC, the hardest to say on a podcast conference name known to man, was explaining how they went back to the drawing board with an all new way to do their models. But the end result is what they've landed on really works. And it really is a very Apple-like approach to on-device AI.
I think that was our
that's my
consensus
takeaway
last week, right, Christina? We felt like they, to me, it's what the vast majority of people who haven't much of an experience with an AI or only with ChatGPT's chatbot will be using going forward. And this will give them, I think, a good sense of what AI can do. It's, anybody who's been using AI seriously is way well beyond what Siri's going to be able to do. But it's still, for the 1.5 billion people using iPhones, this is going to be a big thing. You're muted, Ms. Christina.
Sorry. No, it's great to have a good default. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is that...
it's the default, yeah.
It's the fact that it's a default. And it's the fact that I think we can all be honest about it, and some of us have been since 2024, that the default has been pretty terrible. And so if it's not terrible, even if that's damning with praise, that's a really good thing. If the default experience, and I think especially when you get into things like how this will be able to work with doing things with shortcuts and with other types of automations that only Apple can really let you do with a fully integrated, vertically integrated ecosystem, that I think is going to be fantastic for a lot of folks. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think there are many, many people who already use Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini, but there are lots of other people who don't, or only use it sparingly. And the fact that it can be built into their device and, hopefully work as it has been shown off to work is only a good thing.
Yeah. And there's no chance that Siri is so smart that the Commerce Department will ban it, is there? Oh, there's a little.
Not so long as Tim has more golden tchotchkes to manufacture and drop off.
Keep making those. Keep making those gold bars, Tim. You may be needing them. Yeah, but since we met last, it's kind of ironic. Right after the show, Fable was released last Tuesday, and by Friday, banned by the federal government. We'll talk more about that, of course, on Intelligent Machines on Wednesday. So, did it? Do you think that? Well, what do you think, Andy? Does this live up to what Apple promised 2 years ago?
I think we forget about what Apple promised 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah. I think they'd like to forget about it.
I honestly think that, while I was watching the keynote, I was sort of repeating the demonstrations that they were giving on my Pixel phone through Gemini and a couple other AIs. They wouldn't. What I loved about it was that they didn't show off anything that I haven't been able to do daily for the past year or so. Okay, but that's not terribly impressive. What's impressive is how well it seems like a feature of the iPhone, a feature of the entire experience. What would have been a big fail is if they'd come back and said, here is a feature of the keyboard that where it can predict some text for you. Here is a feature of the launcher where it can automatically take things down for you. Here's a new feature we've added to Calendar, and now here's a separate app that's our intelligent assistant. What they did is they basically said there is an assistant that, much like if you are lucky enough to rate an office with an assistant at a desk outside the door, they're always there, out of sight. When you call upon them, they'll stick their head in the door and fix things for you and get involved in what you need them to do. But the thing is, it's always a presence, even if you're not actually using it. And it seems like such a natural and integral way to enhance the entire iPhone experience that I've got a piece that I didn't finish yesterday because I'm thinking too hard about it. I used to think that AI was one of the great levelers because, look, I can basically get whatever AI assistant I want on whatever phone I want. So lock-in is no longer as big a problem. So if I'm using AI as one of my points of contact for a lot of the features that I'm doing. However, Apple, either intentionally or just because they like to make things that are beautiful and elegant, they've built something that is not in any way on the same level as an app that works alongside, even an app that is integrated with the other apps on your phone. Gemini is great. I love Gemini. I continue to pay $20 a month forever for it, but it will never be as accessible and as part of the day-to-day, moment-by-moment experience on the iPhone as Siri is. So I'm really, really excited to find out if they can fill out the rest of the experience to make it as reliable and consistent as Gemini is. Gemini still has, in addition to all the stuff it can do, it's also the thing where I trust it to have an answer to whatever problem I throw at it at this point. Even if it's not perfect, I know how it works and I know how to get it to do what I want, and I'm pretty sure it's going to get me 90% of there. It would be terrible if Siri AI is just good at taking down those calendar things, and I can count off, okay, here are these 11 things I'm going to throw to Siri. Anything else I'm going to switch over to Claude, or I'm going to switch over to Gemini. If they can actually mature this in the course of a year or two, where I'm just using it over Gemini, my favorite agent, because it's just easier to use and it's more in my mind space when I'm doing something on my iPhone, that would be a miracle, but I think it's a very, very attainable miracle for them after what they've shown off last week.
You actually, I think one of the most interesting things is that they did say with App Intents, developers can also build this intelligence into their own apps. And of course, that's a two-way street because those apps will then feed information back to Siri, which can then collate information from a variety of apps. But you point this out on Daring Fireball, John, that the private cloud, the highest end compute, is actually going to be limited to people with a lot of money who sell a lot.
No.
Or vice versa.
No, right. You can't buy your way out of it, which is actually even more limited.
You have to have fewer than 2 million first-time app downloads.
Right. And it's not just for an app that you want to add private cloud or Apple Intelligence to. And I think, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that it's like if an app is using Apple Intelligence, I could be wrong, but I think that you ask the system to do something, and then the system determines whether it's going to try to do it with an on-device model or, oh, that's difficult, we're going to send that off to private cloud compute.
That's the impression I got, that they were orchestrating the calls.
And that they don't really want individual apps to be making that decision. Let the system decide what's difficult for that, so that you don't. But basically, to use that in a third-party app in Apple Intelligence, you have to be part of the small business program, which has its own, it's like $1 million in revenue. I forget what, but somewhere around there. And 90-some% of developers do qualify for the small business program. But in addition to that, whatever the developer's most popular app is of all time, it has to be under 2 million initial downloads.
This is to what? Keep Amazon from using it, or Snapchat, or Meta, or what?
I hope that Apple, that maybe they didn't think too much of. I guess the gist is, and again, Apple being Apple, they're not explaining what the explanation is. But I think the basic explanation is the Occam's razor applies, that the most important thing from Apple's perspective is Siri AI. That's what most people are going to use. And that's Apple's use case of private cloud compute. And then add to that the things where Apple itself is using Apple Intelligence, like Numbers and Pages and Keynote, with the Creator Studio editions where they've added some AI features. Obviously, Apple is not limited to apps with only 2 million downloads. It's Apple. So Apple is, I think, worried, and I think probably reasonably so, that they're going to be under, whatever they expect their usage of private cloud compute in their servers. And Apple, some of the queries are still going to go to the ones running Apple Silicon. But the big message was that the most complex models are the ones running Gemini on the server in Google-owned facilities, but running Apple software. It's a collaboration, blah, blah, blah.
With NVIDIA chips. But is it really Gemini? They kind of pretend it's not.
Well, they say
it's Apple Foundation models trained by Gemini or something.
Yeah, something like that. They're not. At least it's not Gemini in terms of when you ask a question and in Siri,
right.
And then you go to your Gemini
Hi, I'm
app.
Gemini. Right.
It's not going to show up in your Gemini history, right? It's seemingly different.
Yeah.
It really is. It's like starting with go back far enough to the roots and.
But is it? I mean,
their own version.
So there's a wide range. It could be white label Gemini, or it could be something else. I don't know. Anyway, but for third parties,
it's just
you're not going to get access to that. If you're big, if you're that big, you're going to. And you can't even pay for it.
Right. I spoke to one developer or Guy Rambo, who tweeted about it on Mastodon, that he's got an old app from 2010 and it's sitting at like 1.6 million downloads. So now what does he do? Does he pull the app from the App Store so that it doesn't cross 2 million and he's locked out of Apple Intelligence? Hopefully they'll just rethink this limitation. Basically, they don't want big developers using it because they don't know if they can keep up and what their bill from Google is going to be. Right?
Well, that makes sense. It's just it's economic, not anti-competitive. That makes sense, actually.
Yeah, and I think come next year or maybe halfway through the year, if everything looks good, and hey, once Siri AI has rolled out to the general iOS population in the fall, when iOS 27 ships for real and it's out of beta and real people are using it around the world or whatever countries they initially roll it out in, if they can keep up with it and it doesn't fall down and the server bill isn't too big from Google, maybe they'll loosen the restrictions on third-party apps. But I think it's sort of like one thing first, and that's Apple's built-in use of Apple Intelligence and Siri first. And let's make sure that works before they expand it to third-party developers.
One of my favorite cryptographers, Matthew Green from Johns Hopkins, says private cloud isn't all that private. He says private inference isn't private enough. His issue is that it's going to inevitably leak information because when it calls out to the world, it's going to call out with your prompt, and that's going to leak out. So he gives actually a scenario in here. Your calendar, for instance, if you're going to try to make a reservation at a restaurant, or actually with a number of participants, that information is going to have to leak out in order for it to work. So he's a cryptographer, and so he always thinks of the adversarial situation. But I think this is important to remember. You can say private cloud, and we've seen this before with data anonymization and other things, but it isn't always as private as one would think. Nevertheless, isn't this what Apple's biggest pitch is? We may not have the smartest AI, but we have the most private AI. Yes? You agree, Christina?
I mean, maybe. I mean, I think that's definitely the marketing narrative, right? Like, I think that's definitely what they're pushing, and there is definitely some truth to it, right? That Apple's saying, look, we're not training on this data, we're not trying to use this to build something else. Although I would, I guess, like to see some of the really fine print about how they're getting any sort of data to train anything. I find it
where's
hard
that
to believe-
data coming from?
Right. I was going to say, I find it hard to believe that all of it is synthetic. It might be one of those things that you opt in, like if you opt in to let Siri improve, or if you opt in to like give developers feedback, they might
They did say
okay,
it'll be auditable by third parties.
Right. And so it might be one of those things where, we're not taking your prompt history and specific things, but we might take general usage-based things to, cover behavior. I'm not sure. At the same time, so I feel like some of it is a marketing narrative, but I think a successful one, and there's some validity to that. At the same time, I think Matthew Green is incredibly bright, and I'm not saying that he is wrong, but I do wonder if that misses the point a little bit, right? Because I don't think that there exists a way where we could have AI that would actually be useful, that would be as privacy and would do all the things, privacy focused, and would do all the things that would actually make it useful that anyone would actually want to use. Like there has to be a certain amount of give and take on that. And that's why I hope that there are ways for people who really are like, I don't want any of this, that you can just turn all of this off. But I think that this becomes kind of one of those implicit agreements that we all have to make. And this does get into, ironically, in a different way, but it kind of underscores some of the tension with the EU, I think, a little bit, which is that you have to take the trade-offs if you want to use this technology. And some of that means that, some of the prompt information or some other data transfer will exist, but that happens anytime you interact with a third-party API. It's not like this is a new thing. So I wonder
Apple will be better than everybody else. They may not be perfect.
Right, exactly. And maybe they'll be better, maybe they won't, I don't know. But I think that they definitely are using it as a selling point for themselves. But I just don't think that it's possible for us to have AI in this way that's going to be actually useful and fully localized and never talk to any sort of third party and have any ability for data to ever leak in any conceivable way. It just
we were
doesn't
debating
work.
this on security. Now we had somebody email and say, well, aren't these companies collecting everything? How can I do this privately? And I foolishly, I guess, thought, no. Unless you ask them to remember stuff, they're not collecting this. Well, I got a signal message from a guy who shall remain nameless, who says, speaking with insider knowledge from one of the frontier AI companies, they absolutely extract every bit of knowledge and insight from user chats. I said, well, wait, what if I don't turn on memory in the chat app? He says, turning off memory means they aren't exposed to the user, but they're still extracted by the provider for their use according to the terms and conditions. Yes, memories are extracted and leveraged in first-party CLI harnesses as well.
Yeah. Unless you're an enterprise. Enterprise is a little bit different. There are some business agreements
they're
that are
sensitive,
different.
right?
Yeah.
So
Christina,
there's certain agreements.
I've always been meaning to ask you, like, when Google announced their private AI compute, basically as a response to Apple's whole like fireworks show about it's absolutely engineering-wise impossible for Apple or any other company to see any of the data that you're sending to us when we need to use an AI cloud model. They seem to be kind of equivalent in terms of what I would want as a user. They seem to be going at it in different directions, where Google is not necessarily writing an entirely new operating system that's privacy cloud AI based. But I could also, given how they explained it, I couldn't see how data could get out or be observed by Google. Like, have you looked at those two? What are they kind of equivalent, or is
they
Apple...
seem very similar. They seem very similar, and there might be differences in the implementation, and there might be differences in certain things they can do, but the idea is definitely the same. But I think that the big thing there is that not everything that you're using associated with the Google product, and that's the thing that everybody should know, even if you're paying, if you're not a business user, if that's thing isn't on. Google has always been very upfront about the fact that it uses your data to make things better. But I do think that in terms of the way that that Google is like defined private AI compute and how to build private AI stuff for some of the Gemini models on the cloud, it is similar to what Apple is doing. But like the Gemini consumer apps, no, I mean that's part of the terms of service. Right. Yeah. That this is a thing that's happening. That yes, we can train on your data, we can train on your prompts.
Admiral Birdie says in our Discord, yeah, Google for Enterprises definitely has a different set of rules. You could tell because it's terrible. There is something to be said for memory. I mean, one of the things I do with my agent is I have like 3 different memory systems because I want it to remember everything, but it's local as opposed to putting it up on the cloud. All right, I'll stop being a negative Nelly. Let's be more positive about this. So, John, you've played with Siri. What kinds of queries have you asked? What's your experience been?
It's funny because the hardest part about it, honestly, is remembering that I'm supposed to be asking Siri to be useful. Like,
you aren't really used to that, are you? Yeah.
It's like your cousin after his second rehab, and everyone's telling you that it took. He's responsible now, but they're like, I'm not used to asking him to pick up stuff at the market and giving him cash.
Yes, exactly. And he is in recovery, and he's doing great. And you really,
we're happy for him.
But you don't. It's
you're always waiting, aren't you, for that other shoe to drop?
And it's already Saturday night and it's 8:00. He's it's like, no, he's great. He can drive. It's but it's like little things. Totally realistic. My barber is in a building where to get in the building you need a door code from the street, and I can never friggin' remember it. And so I literally was going to get a haircut on Saturday, and I just asked, hey, what did Tola tell me? That's his name, Tola. What did he tell me the door code is?
Wow.
And it took a couple seconds, and then it surfaced a text message from, I don't know, a week or two ago, or last time I got a haircut, a couple weeks, but showed me the text message in iMessage and read the code aloud.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and it's a realistic scenario, and it's like, I knew it was in my text messages, and I could have gone in there and looked him up and scrolled back, but I was on the sidewalk walking through the city and just said it aloud to the iPhone. And, was it fast? No. But was it too slow? No. It was a totally reasonable amount of time to get the answer, and it was correct.
Was it the same speed as they showed on stage, roughly? I mean,
I would say so, which was, a little uncomfortably slow.
No, but I liked that. I appreciated that they did that because they were at least being honest about that.
I loved it. And that was a huge part of my Something is Rotten in the State of Cupertino was that they clearly had edited the ones from 2 years ago. And
well, as we pointed out, they paid $250 million settlement for false advertising. That might have
and probably more
them.
Honestly, probably more than that reputationally, right?
Sure,
It's one of those things like, what is your reputation worth? You can't really put a dollar on it. And I think whatever they paid in that class action lawsuit, they lost more than that in terms of the reputational hit to their,
Agreed.
And that's the type of thing. Lots of little things that I have been going to ChatGPT more for, because web search results often just don't put the obvious answer first. What time do the Knicks play? What time is the next game in the NBA finals or something? I mean, obviously it's next year at this point, but like last week they were legit questions. And it gave the right answer every time. And there were the sort of questions. And again, there's that button right on the side of the phone begging to be used to ask these sort of questions. And it's so hard to retrain myself to like, hey, I'm doing this professionally to test it over the summer. But like, last year, it wasn't like I had a reason to try Siri after WWDC. There was no reason to try it again.
But that's the difference. You could
so
ask
those type of questions. I've also been asking questions. Yeah. Well, I just want to add, the other thing I've been asking are questions that are answered in my Apple Notes. I'm a big user of Apple Notes. I've got 2,000 of them, 2,147, asking questions that are stored in my Apple Notes, and it gives me the right answer every time.
I think that's the key.
And that is something that like ChatGPT and Claude can't do.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You can ask ChatGPT when the Knicks game is. That's any AI can do that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't know what's in your notes. It doesn't know what's in your messages, and I think that's the real value that Apple can add.
And that's what gets me about the possibility of lock-in, and it's true of Google services too. It's like I don't like.
Does Google do that though? Are they?
Well, I mean, they've got the daily brief that they introduced last month, and I've been finding it actually surprisingly, shockingly useful. Like I didn't plan to start using it, but the thing is, like that daily notification, every time I tap it, it does surface something that I might have forgotten about or a message that I totally missed. I'm going to have dinner with 9 of my friends on Friday, possibly partly because like this message that got buried in 500 WWDC mails, like it surfaced at forums. Oh, by the way, your friends are still like waiting for you to reply to this. But the thing is, like, it works right now, at least it works great on every single Google service that you have, including your chats with Gemini, your messages, Google Messages, everything like that. Once you go outside there, out to outer mailboxes, if you're using Apple Calendar, if you're using Apple Messages, it's not going to see that, and it's not going to get stuff from there. And it would bum me out if I liked Siri so much that I had to switch from my favorite note-taking app, which is Notion, and I had to switch to Apple Notes because it's the one that works the best. I'm sure there's going to be some sort of a bridge, some sort of a plugin.
Well, that's why you want these $2 million plus companies.
I'm sorry,
to have
Joplin.
access,
I'm sorry, Joplin, not Notion. But
I guess they don't need access to use the intents. They don't get private cloud, so they could.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, but the thing is, I have that knowledge and I have that interest that there must be a plugin for Joplin for this. It's an open source.
Well, let me ask
this
that.
big community. But the thing is, like, I'm sorry, just to finish my thought. The people who are just normal consumers, they can't really be expected to put in all that kind of effort and put that trust into a third party. So they're basically going to use what is wired up and working and great and polished and perfect when you take the phone out of the box, whether it is Gemini on a Pixel phone or whether it is Siri AI on an iPhone. And I in a perfect world that I know that can't exist, it would be just as easy to integrate these AI assistants with any tool that you have, rather than it being naturally more knowledgeable about its own in-house stuff than anything that's outside. So do we know if third-party apps data will be available to Siri? This was something the developer has to turn on, right? So the Joplin developer would have to have it's an intent to share with Siri. How does that work? Do we know? Anybody? I don't. I know how it works on. I know how it works on Android.
I can see why Apple might not want to do that, because then you're compelled to use Notes and Messages.
Well, and also, to be fair, there's a privacy and security angle to it, where they can make sure they can know that the conduit between Siri and what they're in is they can give themselves privileges that they can't responsibly give to random third-party developers.
It's less useful, though, isn't it? If you're using
absolutely.
So there is an app intents framework, and that basically, and I'm reading off their website right now, make content and actions discoverable by Apple Intelligence and support system experiences like Siri, Spotlight, shortcuts, and widgets. And
so you could open it up to Spotlight or just
so you could open up to Spotlight and Apple Intelligence. Now, how that will be specifically integrated into something like Siri AI, I don't know, and how deeply that will go. Okay, here they have a whole thing: Apple Intelligence and Siri AI. Integrate your app with Apple Intelligence and bring it to Siri AI. So they do have.
I like that.
They do have ways to do that, but that would mean the developers have to do that, and I'm sure that at least on the iOS side, I think macOS might be a little bit more difficult. But to be completely candid with you, I don't think macOS is going to be a big Apple AI use case.
Really? I don't think so.
No, because I think that why would you, like Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini, their desktop apps already work just as well. Like to me, default is not good enough on the desktop, and I might be alone in that, but I feel like default can be good enough on the phone. On the desktop, I've already been able to do all the things that they're telling me Apple Intelligence can do for years. There's zero reason why I would want to have to jump through additional hoops, assuming that my note-taking app of choice or something didn't have an app intent, if that makes any sense.
This is something Google wanted to do for a long time. Remember, they had those cards, the Google Now cards. You would slide to the right on the Pixel, and then you'd have like, oh, your plane is on time, and you're going to be at the airport in a half an hour. Shall I? And Google have backed off on that because I think it has a certain amount of creepy. Have you played, Andy, with Dream Beans yet in Google?
I have not used Dream Beans yet.
Dream Beans is a Google. All right, I'm going to show you Dream Beans.
We had some fun with that topic a few weeks ago on the Google show.
This is a Google experiment, and it looks into your deepest, darkest secrets, and then produces these. You can show my screen, John. It produces these.
Cartoons.
So that's me and my wife. Pretty good likeness. And it's telling me that we could get fresh produce at the Eastside Farmers Market. It's saying I should check my Arch Linux setup for. Now, how does it know I'm using Arch Linux? I don't know, but it does. For the Atomic Arch hijack, I already did. Try the rebuilt Siri AI app in the Apple iOS 27 developer beta. Look how content I am in my little sweater in my armchair. Cooking a 48-hour sous vide chuck roast for a midweek dinner. It knows things about me that, look, it even knows I have an Anova sous vide. It must be looking at my purchases. It's a little creepy. That's exactly what my gym looks like.
Well, this is like even 2 years ago. I was when Apple gave us their first cut at Apple Intelligence. I'm saying, you're really saying that Apple has a unique advantage over other AI because
Google
they have access to your personal information.
Right.
You are drinking at a high school level. Google is drinking at a Mardi Gras level when it comes to getting information about you.
And I know I'm unusual. Because I don't mind this. I want it to know everything, and I want it to give me that useful information. But I think a lot of people would be very like...
It depends. Like I've always said, my personal point of view, and it's just a personal point of view, is that you enter into a contract, so to speak, with Google, and I'm willing to give them exposure to all kinds of data about me, and in return, they give me services that are greatly, greatly, greatly enhanced by knowledge of what my life is and what my intentions are at any given moment. Other people may not like that deal, and if they can turn it down, then I think that overall that's an okay thing. The problem is that when there's this surveillance that's happening sunrise to sunset, even to people who do not want to enter into that bargain. We enter into that bargain with Apple as well. It's just that they don't, at this point, monetize the data that they're collecting very well. And also to this point, before Siri AI, I don't think they do a really good job of enhancing my experience with their personal knowledge of me. But I will. So again, that's why I love these features like the Daily Brief, where I didn't really set anything up, but it was able to remind me, oh, by the way, you've also you were working on this coding project last week. You might want to look back at this Python library that you were looking at, because that looked like that was going to be something that you were very, very interested in. I think that it does a very, very good job at that. I don't know that they always do this, as you say, in the least creepiest manner. One of the things I like about Google is that they are willing to do things and label them an experiment and put them in a place called labs.
It is in a lab, right?
We know this is out there. We just think this is cool, and based on how people freak out or embrace this, like Notebook LM started out as an experiment, started out as a lab.
People love it,
and it revolutionized.
It is great.
Revolutionized.
Is one of the best things that, in my opinion, like Google put out at all, and then it obviously became like a real product. But yeah, that they do at least, because the Google graveyard is real.
They're willing to swing and a miss in public in front of 30,000 paying fans.
There's also the issue of hallucinations. A German court has ruled that Google is liable for the AI overviews if they're wrong, that they can be sued for life. Now, this is why one of the reasons why Apple quite wisely said, no Siri for you. For instance, Dreambeans thinks for some reason I'm going to Rome in December. Now, I would love to be going to Rome in December, but it says there's a beautiful gate just a short walk from my hotel. That's clearly a hallucination. I don't know where it got that, but nevertheless,
I don't know. Check your credit card and make sure it didn't.
Yeah, maybe I am going to Rome
too.
Now you're going to
see. I've got a little surprise for you.
You're going to see a few burned out and overturned police cars. That means you're heading the right direction. That's where the carnival is.
Flying over the Knicks celebration. Anyway, let's take a little break. We will have more. You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Great to have John Gruber of DaringFireball.net. I want you to tell that story. I wasn't aware of this whole issue of why it's .net, even though you have .com. But hold the thought. We'll do that in a sec. Christina Warren is also here from GitHub, where she's developer relations and is a avid AI user. What local model are you using in your framework these days?
God, I think I'm still using Qwen.
Yeah, I was using Qwen until yesterday when GLM 5.2 came out. Now I'm all excited.
I haven't had a chance to play with that one yet. Is it good? I'll put it on this week.
This is actually now the real downside of having these agents is like I keep trying all these new models. It's a really bad habit, But the agent remembers everything regardless of the model. So it's really the agent is
well, that's the nice thing, right? Is that if you're using Hermes or OpenClaw or whatever, like that takes care of all the history and memory for you, and then you can just swap the model out.
GLM 5.2 so far, very impressive. Yes.
Cool.
I'm very impressed. Also, Andy Anako, who religiously writes all his posts on Nako.com by himself. And we're proud of it.
In my freezing garret, just like La Boheme, only without the music.
Minus the tuberculosis. Our show today.
You're still young. Winter's coming.
Well, let me tell you something. If you think you've got a strange cough, you might want to listen to our next sponsor, ZocDoc. Life can feel like a puzzle. You're constantly trying to fit all the pieces together, your career, your passions, and of course, your healthcare. It's a lot, but finding healthcare should not be the trickiest piece to fit into everything going on. It shouldn't be at the bottom of that list. ZocDoc makes it easy to find and book an appointment. ZocDoc is a free app and website that helps you find and book high-quality in-network doctors so you can find someone you love. We're talking about booking in-network appointments. More than 150,000 providers across all 50 states. And it's not just MDs. Dermatology, dentistry, primary care, eye care, one of over 200 plus specialties offered on ZocDoc. So you can easily search. You can search by specialty. You can search by symptom to build the care team that's right for you. And you can choose a doctor that fits your style. You want to see your doctor in person? Yes, you can do that. You prefer a video visit? You can do that. Their search narrows it down that carefully. You'll view thousands, this is my favorite part, thousands of verified patient reviews, real patient reviews, to give you a real sense of who your doctor is. You know, some people want the doctor to give them every piece of information possible so they can make their decision. Some people want the doctor just to tell them the one thing to do. Don't give me choices. Some people want a doctor with great bedside manner, with small talk, or somebody who'll root for the Yankees. Whatever it is, you can feel confident. You can book with a doctor you know you'll love. And when you're ready, you can see their real-time availability and book it instantly. Click it right there on the site or in the app and book. No phone tag, no waiting around. And this is great. Appointments made through ZocDoc happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. I've used it myself, for family members. The worst thing in the world is to find some care provider that you want, and then they're not available or they're not taking new patients. Well, ZocDoc eliminates that. Stop putting off those doctor appointments. Go to ZocDoc.com/MacBreak to find and instantly book a doctor you love today. That's ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. And we thank ZocDoc for sponsoring this message. ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. I was going to ask John about Daring Fireball I've trained myself to type .net, but then you said you have .com? What?
This is so I don't when I do a media appearance, CNN or something like that. If they, and it's like we're going to be on the air in a minute. You sound good, you look good, whatever, and they're like daringfireball.com. I think I'll let it go because
just let them do it.
I registered both domains in 2002, maybe 2001, maybe the site started in 2002, but I might have had the domain a year before I launched. But I got both. But back then, I had it in my head that .com was for companies and commerce on the internet. And it wasn't what I was doing. And I wasn't an org, so I didn't even register daringfireball.org because I'm not an organization. I'm on the internet. I don't know. When the domain name system started in the 90s, I just thought .net was like .internet. Like that's the neutral main top level domain for a site on the internet. And I was going to stick with it. And when I launched Daring Fireball, I had both domains, and daringfireball.com has just redirected to daringfireball.net for 24 years and counting. So it doesn't matter if you get it wrong, but if I could go back in time to my younger self, I'd say give it up. That .net thing is not going to happen. So
old timers will remember that this for a long time I called this a netcast. And even the opening, it said netcasts you love. Finally, my marketing team a couple of years ago said, can we please just call it a podcast? Nobody knows what the hell you're talking about, Leo. So I love it that you never gave in. This is the advantage you have. You don't have a marketing team.
Also, John, I've always thought that it was like, you know how like every house has like the front door that enters into the living room, and then there's the side door that enters into the kitchen, and everybody who's in the family or friend of the family doesn't bother with the front door. They go around to the kitchen door. I've always thought that your .NET is the kitchen door. It's like people who are like part of the group, like they don't even have to call ahead.
I love that. My mother-in-law's house is exactly like that. Yep. And when somebody, it's like a holiday, it's like Easter Sunday, and somebody rings or knocks on the front door, it's like, oh, who's that? Who's that? Who could that possibly be?
If someone's knocking on and rattling the screen door in the kitchen, you actually drop what you're doing and answer the door because it is someone you want to see. Doorbell, process server, salesman.
Yes.
By Waterloo in our Discord says, when I was growing up, we only had 6 domains, .com, .edu, .mil, .org, and .gov, and we liked it.
Oh, you didn't have to type in addresses. Oh, fancy.
I have, for a long time, I've been leo.fm on my blog. And I still, my email is .email, and I still constantly have to tell people, no, not .email.com. Not .fm.com. People are all stuck with that. So I want to talk a little bit about what role Gemini plays. How much Gemini really is inside Siri AI. You went to that little panel they had after the keynote, John, where Rockwell and Federighi, and they sat in chairs and they did the demos. Yeah. Mike did the same demo he did in the film, which I thought that's kind of a giveaway. It's a little bit of a canned demo. But they were adamant that this is not Gemini.
Well, Federighi's rant was pretty good, and the diagram was pretty good. But I think the problem Apple is facing is that Google made the decision marketing-wise to use the name Gemini for everything AI related, or at least LLM related. And what was the name that they had?
Bard.
Yes,
first,
right.
They had to change it.
They had to.
Bard was doing some bad things.
Yeah. And if they had made different names for the models from the product, and just for example, like you could be using GPT-03, or I know that's old, but it's like that's the name of the model. But then what app are you using? Oh, the app is ChatGPT.
Right.
It's like effectively they were using like the equivalent of like GPT-4.5, but Google just calls it Gemini. Right, they're using the mod there, or they got and they're also being very secretive. Perhaps just because they're Apple, perhaps because it's in the contract with Google that some of the technical details. But they started with the model and then collaborated with Google to build their own model on top of the base model from Google that isn't connected to the rest of the Gemini system. Right. So if you have never signed up for a Google account, period, you don't even have a Gmail address, you can use Apple Intelligence, and there's, you'd never know you're integrating with something from Google. It is like saying that you're using Microsoft's C compiler, but now it's running on the Mac and it's compiling C code into a binary that you can run. They're using Google's models to build out their own models, and effectively, you don't need to know this, except, there is no except. You could not know this, and you can happily use the new Siri AI and never worry about it. But the proof basically is my 1 week experience using Siri AI is so positive, and anything I can think of that's negative is like, that could be a little bit better. But there have been no, that is so off the rails, and no modern LLM system would ever make a mistake. There have been no fluffs like that.
And no hallucinations.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think anything that I would call a hallucination. And a couple of times where I've compared some answers versus ChatGPT, if anything, Apple's answers seem to be more accurate.
Right.
And I think that's basically it, that instead of doing their own research and paying the literally tens of billions of dollars to train a leading edge model, they've just piggybacked on top of Google to borrow one, to use as their own. But it is their own.
There's a lot of pride that Apple has. I think it's a wounded pride in their models. Like, we have our own models. Our models are very good.
Sure.
We're not, this isn't Gemini, and yet it is Gemini. So that's the question. It's not a C compiler. I guess, Christina, we think it's distillation, right? That they post-trained the AFM models on Gemini.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's what I think. And I mean, John was in the room with them, so he can speak more to that. But that does seem to be exactly what they said.
And by the way, John's right. Nobody cares about this except us.
No, but it is interesting. I mean, but one of the things I think that Federici apparently said, this is, I'm quoting Macworld, who I guess was able to get this down, said, trained using proprietary data with reinforcement learning and refined using outputs from Gemini frontier models.
Yep.
So
that's distillation, right?
That's distillation. That's what this is, and that's what I'd assumed this was last week. Now, that doesn't mean that the distillation doesn't mean that it operates in a way that might be better in some ways. It could be worse in some ways, right? Like, we've already seen reports from people saying that if you want to get images created of certain historical figures or other things, that the guardrails might be higher than they are if you were to just use the Gemini directly through Google.
Yeah.
And as John also pointed out, and this is a very valid point, and I can say this because I used to have to work on these things and explain the differences, which was sometimes difficult. The Gemini that you get from the Gemini consumer app or from like Gemini Enterprise or whatever is not necessarily the same as if you get it directly from using the Gemini API calls. They're similar, but there are modifications that you make to kind of the base model. And that, again, does become difficult to understand as a consumer, although you don't really need to. It's worse, I think, more if you're Google, because you call everything Gemini and then it's a different experience, a slightly different model on every surface that you're on. And that's confusing. Whereas Apple is just going to have, kind of their distillation on top of the core, Gemini models. And I assume that they'll, continue to do reinforcement and distillation over time.
Well, that's my question, is this may not be a long-term relationship with Gemini, right?
I mean,
they could, after a few years, say, thank you, bye-bye.
Yeah,
they could.
I'm sorry, so just to interject. That's why this is an interesting conversation to have, because when the partnership, when the business relationship was first announced, one of the things that was on the table was, okay, so is Gemini going to be part of Apple Intelligence, and that to buy them some time while they build out and get Apple Intelligence, their own Apple Intelligence models working, and then at some point they will pop out the Gemini, pop back in the Apple Intelligence? Or is it the sort of thing where it's always going to be Apple's own models, but they're getting tuning from Gemini, they're getting training from Gemini, they're getting experience from Gemini, so that gradually the dependence on Gemini is going to be less and less and less, but it will never be a case where you're not using an Apple actual model. It's $1 billion a year plus whatever compute they're going to be buying from. I can't imagine that beyond Apple's revulsion of relying on outside technology, they're going to want to keep writing those checks year after year after year indefinitely.
Well, I mean, but it would cost them so much more to build it themselves.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
I mean, that's
and
the thing.
It
would literally cost them orders of magnitude more. I was going to say, they don't have to. Where are you going to get the data centers? Where are you going to get the chips? Where are you going to get the custom silicon for training? How are you going to figure out what data you can use to train the data set? Because then you have to scrape everything, which they've already done with their other frontier models or attempts at a frontier model before. But I don't know. I think $1 billion a year is pretty freaking cheap.
It's really cheap. Google's paying $1 billion a month to Grok for capacity, so it's very cheap.
And they're paying Apple $20 billion a year for search default.
Right.
So
I wonder if there's a check that goes one way and a check that goes the other way, or they just give them a discount. I don't know. So that's for the accountants to figure out.
Let me jump in here, and because I've been looking into this and I haven't written about it yet, but I started using this over the last week. It popped into my head good journalistic instinct that I have. Like, how do we know they're paying $1 billion a year to Google for this? And I started researching it, and it really all comes down to Mark Gurman. It's one reporter at one place, and he was right that he was very much right. It totally was the first to report it, and it was exactly right that Apple was collaborating with Google on exactly the thing we're talking about, like a sort of white label version of Gemini. He was exactly right about that. And then he put out the $1 billion number, and that's everything you've seen about it since more or less comes back to that.
That's a good point.
I don't think it's possible that they negotiated a flat fee. I was thinking about this. It makes no sense, because if they negotiated a flat fee, Apple could let users go crazy, and then Google is like, hey, you guys are using $40 billion of compute a year, and Apple's like, yeah, good deal for $1 billion, right? It's got to be usage-based. It absolutely, it doesn't
Apple
make any
did say,
sense.
if you're going to go into the cloud, there'll be limits unless you have an iCloud Plus account, right?
So I wouldn't be surprised if, from Apple's perspective, they were like, we would like to cap our spend at $1 billion for the next year, and that was Apple's intention, and that maybe that's what Gurman's sources told him, that they're looking to spend $1 billion. And Google was like, well, if you use this much, that would cost about $1 billion. Let's say that's about $1 billion. And Apple's doing the math and thinking like users and how much they're going to use. And they're like, okay, that would be about $1 billion. And that's why they put those caps in that we were talking about earlier.
Right.
That, for example, third-party apps can't just use Apple Intelligence and private cloud compute, because that would cost Apple more.
But go ahead.
So I don't think they're spending much. I'll bet that they're hoping to spend $1 billion a year. And to build the capabilities that the Apple Intelligence that you can get today in the developer betas, anybody out there with an Apple developer account can install on their phone or iPad or Mac today, to get there on their own would have cost hundreds of billions of dollars and maybe not have worked, right?
Right.
Who knows?
Well, they may have already spent that. Maybe that's what the problem was, that they tried to do this on their own.
I can't possibly believe that this is just a $1 billion deal. It's usage-based.
That's a very good point.
I agree. If that number had been thrown out, I've always assumed that was basically fees for turning the wrenches and putting in the pipe. I mean, Google's AI, or I think it's for Google.
They could simply have been $1 billion to train on Gemini post training.
Well, again, Google's AI cloud has a backlog of $460 billion as of last quarter.
Right.
Like that's how big. That's just the backlog. That's not actually
they're borrowing $80 billion.
Yeah. So it always came to it's going to be weird when Apple's going to get a honeymoon period for the next year or two, because a small fraction of the iPhones that are out there are going to be capable of running everything that can cost Apple a whole lot of money. The rubber is going to meet the road in 2 or 3 years from now, when most of the iPhones out there are modern enough that they are actually making a big use of Siri AI. And on top of all that, in 2 or 3 years, Siri AI, God willing, is going to be useful enough that people are going to be relying on it day in and day out. I'm thinking about this in a broad sense. That is Apple going to be happy having a contractor provide that widget to them indefinitely, or do they have a financial strategy for, at this point, we are going to be able to manage this? We're not going to just simply be writing checks of however much we have to pay every single year to a provider to do this for us. We are going to, and this is.
I mean, they have for iCloud.
Yeah,
they've never built their own data centers for iCloud.
Right.
Why is Apple so cagey? I mean, all of this speculation comes out of the simple fact that Apple is being extremely cagey about it. For instance, in their machine learning research white paper, they do talk about their core being a 3 billion parameter model. That makes sense. It's an on-device model. The core advanced is an MOE with 20 billion parameters with 1 to 4 active at any given time. But then that's the last bit of information you get. Then they just say our server-side workhorse is AFM3 Cloud, and then there's AFM3 Cloud Image, and then there's AFM3 Cloud Pro, but they don't tell you anything about its capabilities. If they were a little less cagey, we wouldn't be doing all this speculation. Is it because they think real people don't care and it's just us geeks that care? I mean, there's reason to speculate. For instance, what about safety, John? Did you try any unsafe? Did you try to make an atom bomb?
No, I should have before I appeared on this show.
You should try some unsafe things. Get some nudes. Just I'm curious. I would imagine Apple has stricter safety restrictions than Gemini.
Oh, I think so. I've tried. I forget what I tried. I wish I had it off the top of my head.
Did you ask it how to get pizza toppings to stay on?
No, I did not ask that one either. I'll bet it gets it. I'll bet none of them are going to get that one wrong again.
Again.
Although someone did give it the car wash question, and it did pass.
It did pass the car. It passed it in a weird way, but it passed it. So.
Actually, in a condescending way, which I loved.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah, you could walk it, but I would think that you'd want to drive your car there if you're going to be washing your car. Honestly, if your head weren't screwed on.
Leo, we have a great example, and it happens to be between the same two companies, Apple and Google. And it's one of the benefits to Apple institutionally of the fact that their leadership is so long stayed at the company, right? That these people don't, once you become a senior leader at Apple, that tends to be where you ride out your career. So the people who are there remember when this happened. But when the iPhone launched, Steve Jobs introduced it, and they're like, we have a great Maps app, and it's with our friends at Google, right? And then how did that work out?
Screen too.
Yeah.
Right. That
as
didn't
quickly
hurt
as
Apple.
they could, they moved everything off. They got as much Google off of the iPhone as they could, as quickly.
But eventually, the long story short, what happened was Google got Apple between a rock and a hard place, where the maps that they had access to were bitmap max. They were images that when you scaled, they got pixelated, and then you'd have to download smaller, more fine-grained ones. And the future of maps, and what we all know now, are vector maps, like PDFs that scale. And the big one, and you tell people this, and it's like telling people that the original iPhone didn't shoot video, and they're like, yes, it did. And you're like, no, it had a camera, but it did not even shoot video. And they're like, well, how did you shoot video? And you're like, let me tell you about zip
You had a flip cam, of course.
Flip cam.
Yeah.
But people don't remember that maps didn't have turn-by-turn directions. You didn't say, here's where I want to go, and then your phone told you where to go. It just drew it on a map like you had a paper map with a path mapped out. And obviously that was the future, and it was the present if you were using Google Maps on Android phones, and Apple didn't have it. They didn't have a contractual right to it, and Google was asking Apple for more access to data and users' location and the ability to sign into a Google account at the system level that Apple didn't want to give them. Yeah. And Google thought, well, we've got them, we'll play chicken with them because we kind of know where their own internal maps are at, which is bad. So they're not going to switch to that, and they'll comply with what we're asking. And instead, Apple was like, well, we'll flip the switch and go with the maps that are not good because we've got to make this switch. So I think Apple, literally the actual leaders at the company were there when that happened. They remembered, so I think that they are moving ahead with a plan B that doesn't involve any help from Google and Gemini whenever this contract expires in a handful of years, so that if they need a plan B, they are already working on it. But
it feels like they're a little embarrassed to have to do this. Yeah.
But I also think it raises the question is why did Google agree to help them this way?
What does Google get out of it? That's a really good question.
Because if they're basically saying that the largest tech company in the world needed AI services, who did they come to? Of course, they came to Google. And also the experience that they're going to get in maturing Gemini through this, it is a win-win-win. I'm sure it's not a loss leader for Gemini, but it was just a win-win-win for both companies, always.
I think Apple had to go with Google for a variety of reasons. Remember, John Giannandrea was still there, for one thing. Right. But also, you can go to OpenAI, but they don't really have the capacity. Google can both give you cloud capacity and a model. You go to Amazon, they have the capacity, but they don't have the model.
Right. You'd have to go through them to get Claude. And I mean, and I have no idea how the financials work. I imagine that the Google Cloud division was very happy with whatever the results was for this and extending their usage.
There is an analog to the Maps story because Image Playground was so god awful, so terrible.
I still don't know.
And now
what the
it
hell that
pretty
anyone
much
was
looks
supposed
like
to use it
Nano
for.
Banana. So there isn't. There is a
Like we said last week, it's like if you're looking for Gemini again, it's like, did Barry Bonds take steroids at a certain time? No, I think there's a reason why he's suddenly 300 pounds of muscle when he's smashing a baseball 800.
There was no
yards
evolution of
before.
Image Playground. It just.
I'm guessing that Gemini is a helpful handyman in that one. Yeah. So,
But I think, Andy, I think you're right. I think Google agreed because I do think it's a feather in their cap. I'm sure that they've made sure that the finances work out in their favor. I don't think they're making a huge amount of money because if it's even vaguely in the ballpark of $1 billion, that's not that much money to Google.
Right. Especially if you're giving Apple 20.
But I think the feather in the cap of, hey, when Apple needed help and wanted the best models, who'd they go to? They went to Gemini. That's
brand.
worth more than $1 billion. That's worth more than the money to Google. And let's face it, I think it's a way to kneecap OpenAI and Anthropic. That, hey, let's not let them get this position where Apple is going to give them, they can build up this multi-legged stool of revenue, actual revenue that they can count on. Let's make a deal so that we get that position and they don't, because Google is the company that already has serious revenue, enormous profits that are all growing in their existing business. Why let their upstart competitors get a deal like this and the prestige of working with Apple, that this is who Apple went to?
Christina,
and
you
Google-
also say it's because they're a public company.
I think that goes a long way. Yeah.
Why is that?
Because I think that for a lot of regulatory reasons, for a lot of other stuff, especially when you're talking about dealing with things internationally and other stuff, like I don't know if you want to make that sort of deal with a startup. Let's look at exactly what happened with Fable last week, right? Where the model is pulled. Now imagine that you were in a situation where you had based your foundation model on something that was then pulled, that you're paying this money for, and the government now says that this can't happen. For so many reasons that I can't even get into, I can't conceive of Google ever being in a position that Anthropic was in last week, and that they're still trying to kind of negotiate their way out of. I can't ever see Google being in that position, and not that I can see OpenAI being in that position as much, but Google, they're a public company. They have dedicated people who are, lobbyists to the government. They have, many more times employees. They've been around for, almost 30 years. I think it's just, if you're going to make that sort of, investment, even if you don't plan on it lasting forever, I don't know if you go with a startup. I just don't.
It does argue for Apple getting off Gemini as soon as possible, though. They want to own their own destiny and they don't want to take any chances.
Yeah. But there's a fact that ties into all of this, all the things we've been talking about for the past 5 minutes. I mean, there are a lot of companies that can make a satellite. There's only one or two companies that can give you the rocket that'll take that satellite where it needs to go. And Google is one of those two companies right now. So
John, you got in a little cat fight with Mark.
All right. Well,
he according to knowledgeable people, he said that they would have plugins for other models. He turned out to be right? Apple didn't say this in the keynote. No, you don't think that's still a possibility? I thought we saw that in the code.
Well, it's still a possibility, but it didn't happen at WWDC, and it wasn't announced as an iOS 27 feature. And the only extension that's there is ChatGPT, which has been there for 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, it's been there since iOS 18 2 years ago. And it is the case, and number one, they didn't talk about that extension at all in the keynote. They didn't say anything like, hey, you can still use ChatGPT through Siri, even though you can.
That's a good point. They didn't.
And what Gurman had reported was that they were going to build out, on that extension system, have a vetted list, presumably Claude and Gemini. And Gemini, you would think would be maybe the next partner, because they've collaborated with Google with the Gemini models for Apple's foundation models, right? So why not let Gemini in as an extension? That didn't happen. The architecture. I think that's what Gurman is still hanging his hat on. That the architecture for those plugins is still there, and the ChatGPT plugin is still there. But they didn't talk about it, and the ChatGPT integration doesn't get any of the access to your Spotlight database. So, and when you talk to Siri AI, what happened before the new Siri AI, so for the last 2 years, iOS 18 and iOS 26, if you turned on the optional ChatGPT integration in Apple Intelligence and you asked Siri a difficult question, which for Siri was a lot of questions, it would automatically determine, oh, I can't answer that. I'm going to say, and by default, it would say, I can't answer that. Would you like me to ask ChatGPT, yes or no? And you'd say yes. Or you can turn on a preference that said, automatically go to ChatGPT if you need to. And I turned that on, and every time I've used Siri over the last 2 years, almost everything I've asked it, it would go to ChatGPT, because guess what? The built-in Siri couldn't answer, needed a lot of help. That no longer happens. If you turn on the ChatGPT integration, when you interact with Siri, no matter what you ask it, it will never go to ChatGPT automatically. To get ChatGPT, you have to ask ChatGPT who won the Super Bowl in 1969. You have to say, ask ChatGPT. Or if you're using the new app, you have to go down to the bottom at the chat prompt where it says, ask Siri. And then you can tap that, and it brings up a menu where you can change from Ask Siri to Ask ChatGPT. And then the prompt will say, Ask ChatGPT, and you can type your query there, and it will ask ChatGPT. But it's almost, to me, like, what is the point of it being there? It doesn't integrate with any of the app intents data that we were talking about, which is what makes Siri AI different. It doesn't have access. So, and I've tested it. Apple said that it doesn't work. I've said, ask ChatGPT the exact same question. What did Tola tell me the door code to his building is? And ChatGPT says, I don't have access to your private data. I can't answer that. Yeah. And if you ask other questions, like ask ChatGPT, when was the last time Ben Thompson texted me? ChatGPT will know that it can't answer and will say, asking Siri, ... And then it switches back to Siri, and Siri gives you the answer. So it actually works the other way, where for 2 years, if you asked Siri a question it couldn't answer and you had permitted it, it would ask ChatGPT instead. Now, when you're using the Siri app, if you ask ChatGPT some questions that relate to your personal information, it'll ask Siri and switch you to Siri. So what exactly is the point of these extensions at this point? Right. If you want to use ChatGPT, use the app. If you want to use Gemini, use the Gemini app. It's good, and then it integrates with the rest of the Gemini system on the web and on other devices and other platforms and all that. It doesn't really make any sense to me. And my guess, and I asked off the record, I asked on the record, and they were like, we're not going to talk about that. You know how Apple is. But what I asked is the ChatGPT integration that is still there, is that because of the contract, that you're contractually obligated because it was a 3-year deal or maybe a 4-year deal or a 5-year deal? Who knows? And is that why ChatGPT a couple months ago was like, hey, we're thinking about filing a breach of contract lawsuit with Apple? Yeah. Is that related to this? And they're like, we're not going to talk about that. But that's what my guess is. My guess is the only reason ChatGPT is even there as an option is that 3 years ago when they made this deal, it was at least a 3-year contract. And who knows, if it's still there next year, it might be 4. But I would say there's almost no reason to use this integration at this point.
Yeah. Do you think companies like Notion, who have their own AI, will still use those app intents to give Siri access to your Notion database? Or are they going to say, no, we want to be a silo? That's going to be a big question, is how many third-party apps will integrate?
That is going to be the question, and I don't know. I think it's probably going to be on an app by app basis, and depends on how much. An app like Notion, maybe not, because I don't know how often. I mean, obviously, a lot of people use it for note taking things, but they've already pivoted into enterprise and kind of I don't know if their primary goal is like, oh, we want to keep people creating personal notes on their phones. I'm not sure. Whereas I hope that Gmail, I mean, you already could, if you added a Gmail account just in the Messages app, you could still access things that way. But I would hope that Gmail and some of the other mail providers would add access to that. It's interesting when you look in the App Intents developer portal, like page on the developer portal, the examples they give are how to use it with a music service, how to integrate it in with a messaging app, how to integrate it in with, there were a couple of other examples, but it was interesting to see the examples that they chose, because I think that's telling of, okay, we know that these are the types of providers that people will expect to get things from. And this is the one part of it that, whether you're all in on kind of the Google ecosystem or the Apple ecosystem, or heck, I guess even the Samsung ecosystem, is, will you actually be able to do everything that you want to do from all of your devices, or are you still going to have to rely on using multiple AIs? And unfortunately, I think that the dream of just being able to have, like, I think at least on a phone, I think on a desktop it's much different, but on a phone, I think that we're probably going to be stuck, at least for a little bit of time, if not forever, having to, realize that we still live in data silos. And of course, there will inevitably be a phone from OpenAI or from Anthropic or someone else, right? And they will then be like, please connect to us all your data. That is sort of the one interesting wrinkle here, which I think Apple's a little bit unique on as being an outlier, is that you can already connect, your Microsoft 365 account, your Google Docs account, your Gmail account, a lot of other third-party accounts, many times your Notion account, to services like ChatGPT and to Claude. They already have those abilities to plug in. Like, that's how Claude Cowork works, right? And so I think that what I am sort of curious about, and I'm sure the answer is no, but like, would Apple ever allow you to connect, your Apple Mail or your iCloud, not saying your messages, I'm not saying everything else, I'm not trying to get crazy, to one of those services to be able to surface those things?
You'll never see, I don't think you ever
I don't think you ever will.
Server.
I don't think you ever will, but I'm just pointing out that is one of the things that puts them a little bit behind, is that the way that all this works so great is that everything is in the Apple ecosystem. But the second you step out even a little bit, it starts to fall apart. And if you're already using multiple things anyway, I do think that lessens.
That's Apple.
But I love
nutshell, right?
I love the mechanism that John just explained. You can explain it to me further, because if it's a more fundamental thing. But the idea of remember the day when, if you had a word processor, you had to, all your documents could only be used by that word processor. You could not use it with not even a different word processor on the Mac, let alone on another platform.
Right.
And we're in the risk of having that same problem with all these AIs, because I use 2 or 3 different AIs for 2 or 3 different purposes. Gemini is my general purpose one. It's my personal assistant, so it has all the subtle information about me. Claude knows about my programming projects and things like that. I would love it if I had if I switched back to iPhone, or if I wanted to use Siri AI on my iPad, I could make a request of Gemini. Gemini knows that, okay, I don't have access to that information. Let me ask Siri.
But I can pass it off, and it can ask the pass-through.
Okay,
that would be cool.
Siri tells me that there was an iMessage about this, and because basically I've had them meet. I got the pizza and donuts in the break room. They had a meet and greet, so they trust each other. That seems like such a natural way for these things to get along with each other. Because like I suggested before, I don't begrudge Apple for saying that, look, we're not going to let just any AI or any app have the same level of access that we're going to give our own products, because we put more security and more demands on our own software than we can ask of any developer. But the idea of having, look, I trust this Gemini person. If Gemini wants to delete everything that's in my docs directory, don't let them. But basically, if they're going to make reasonable requests for information that only you, Siri, has, that's kind of a dream.
Yeah. And to be clear, that what I was describing is how it works when you're in the Siri app and switch to Ask ChatGPT in there. So those things don't show up when I go back to the ChatGPT app, which is my main app. There's no record of the interactions that were handed off to Siri. But I had the same thought as you, Andy, that this could be the future. And the vague way that I could see Apple implementing this would be like the way that they protect your photo library now, where if you're in any third-party app and you want to access a photo from your photo library, the system pops up a picker, and you can say, I only want to give this app these 5 recent images. Check. Share these, and then the app sees those images. So like, I'm imagining something like that, but for anything Siri can surface. So you're in the Gemini app and you're asking a question that would query device private information. And it would say, oh, let me ask Siri. And then Siri would pop up a system picker that would be like, here's the answer. Do you want to share this with Gemini?
Yeah.
You see the answer. It's in a system picker. And if you say no, then Gemini just didn't get it. Just like if it brings up the system photo picker and you just decide, yeah, I changed my mind, I'm not going to send it any images. You were looking at them in the picker that gives you the permission. But if you say no, then the app doesn't see any of your pictures, doesn't know which ones just came up that you were looking at. It could be the exact same with answers from Siri, and you're like, then you could see, oh, Siri's going to share those text messages. Oh, those are fine. Those aren't really private. Sure, share those with Gemini, and then Gemini would get that information. I think that would be fabulous, and that's the sort of interoperability that really does hark back to AppleScript, right? Where it's like, oh, it's not just willy-nilly, and an app pokes about and deconstructs the file format for a WordPerfect for DOS, deconstructs it, it's on its own. It's
here's a dictionary. Open it up and take a look what's inside there. Yep.
Here's a dictionary that tells you what structured information you can expect. And to go back to Leo's question from a couple minutes ago, I think Notion in particular is a really interesting example because Apple called them out in the keynote for switching to Swift UI for their native interface, that they're going to switch out some cross-platform, probably web-based stuff that they've been doing for their user interface and using Swift UI for the iPad and iPhone, and maybe the Mac too. I actually don't know, but it could be because Swift UI works on them all. But Apple calling Notion out, there never are many third-party companies that get a call out at WWDC. Notion got a particularly high profile one. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're also saying to them, hey, while you're switching to Swift UI, how about you do the app intents thing? And I think the other thing that Christina didn't mention earlier is, and I don't know what the difference is, but there's also app schema. And the schema is like the dictionary that defines the structure of the information you're providing. And so like the schema would be Notion, I think, defining here's the dictionary that describes a Notion note, and the app intent is the actual API that would be the flow of information to outside. So I wouldn't be surprised if Notion does this, because I also think that what people would ask of Siri AI, of their information in their Notion database, whether it's personal stuff or work stuff, isn't at all duplicating the AI that Notion has built into the app itself for complex workflows and stuff like that. It's one of these ways that like everything is becoming a computer, right? Your watch is a computer. My headphones are two little computers right now in my ear. My lights, most of the light switches in my house now are little computers. Everything is going to have AI to some degree. There's going to be little bits of it. There might be one main one that you use for like, oh, when I'm like spending hours working on an AI project, like a big programming project, this is my AI system. I use Codex or whatever you use. But there will be little pieces of AI everywhere. And I think Siri isn't little, but it is sort of superficial. It's just like, let's just cover the basics and kind of fulfill the promise of Siri from 2010, right? I mean, that's basically what Siri 2027 is. And
that begs the question is will they do an agent? Because that's basically what an agent would do, is represent you to all of the other AIs and data systems out there in the world. Siri
Well,
could
going-
do that. I don't know.
Going
if they
back
want
to
do
that tech talk, they definitely poo-pooed it for now.
They didn't want to do it,
Federighi
yeah.
at that tech talk was like, you guys are talking about agents. And I think it was a great answer where it was sort of, we're doing one thing first, right? And that's
Right.
just getting this stuff to work. And we think agents, have a bright future, but that's ahead of us.
Right.
And I think I think that is such a humble answer from Apple. And
100%.
yeah, people who listen to MacBreak Weekly, people who are on MacBreak Weekly are all in on agents and doing these agentic things with AI. But most people out there aren't.
They're not. Yeah.
I think the question,
that's
though,
I'm
is...
sorry,
Sorry,
go
go on, Andy.
I'll say it very quickly. One of the most exciting things about Google I/O about features on Android was just the ability of, you want a widget to do a certain task, describe it, I will give you that widget, and it will work on a phone, it'll work on a watch, it'll work on the desktop that hopefully we can entice you into buying at the end of the year. The great things move forward when the person who's buying their phone at the Verizon store and the AT&T store, the people off the street, when they understand how to do things just simply by describing it, where I don't have to, where you have a tool like Gemini Sparks, and I do not have to buy a Mac Mini and figure out how to run OpenClaw
Spark
on it.
is Gemini's agent, I might point out.
Yeah,
So.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why Apple. That's why I so agree with you, John. That was such a perfect thing. They were a little bit snarky at a couple points during the main keynote, but that was exactly the right answer. That look, we're not there yet. We can find you Boston on a map with our Siri, and we're very happy that it can do
There's
that.
a risk, though. They're still behind, and all they
right.
announced really is catch up to what's out there right
But
now.
they still got time.
They do
Go
have
ahead.
time,
I'm sorry.
but
Go ahead, Chris.
all I was going to say is when we talk about agents, and I think that's a fine answer, and it's a true answer, right? You should be honest about it. We're not there yet. I think, though, if you look at the third-party app developers who already have, in many cases, a contentious relationship with Apple, because Apple goes out of their way to not make things easy on them, right? Like, let's just be honest. Many of them have already invested time, like Notion, for instance. That's a great point, John. I didn't recall that they were even shouted out during the keynote, but that's great. It's great that they put some Swift UI things and the iOS and iPad app, and yeah, maybe that'll even come to the Mac. We'll see. But Notion already has MCP servers, and they already have agent frameworks, and they already have agents that are integrated right now. Now, if they're going to work, whether it's through a schema or app intent or whatever, if they're having to do additional work, I'm not saying they won't. What I am saying is that this is not the same universe that we were 5 years ago, even, where app developers are going to be jumping at their feet to jump through whatever hoops Apple wants of them to go into, to have their systems integrated. You have to make it compelling to them somehow, and that's the part that I think, we can look to Vision Pro as a proof that just because Apple puts out a new system doesn't mean everyone is going to immediately
If you build it, they may not come. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, especially when there are already known, frameworks and systems for how things work, and like Apple's going to make you do it just a little bit differently. Not saying companies won't do it. Many of them will, and I hope that they do. But we can't pretend like there's not an opportunity cost and that there's not even real, maintenance costs for those companies to support those things when you don't know, okay, well, why am I bothering with this when I already have an agent framework and I can already do these things? Why, just so somebody it would be better for Apple's overall ecosystem for me to be able to surface, my data from Notion. But what's in it for Notion?
Right. Yeah. I got to take a break. I wish I'm way behind. This conversation is too interesting, but we will continue on. I mean, this is very interesting. It's great to have John Gruber in the house. First time on MacBreak Weekly. I don't know how we've managed to miss you for so long, but we're so glad to have you. We quote you pretty much every week from daringfireball.net. Christina Warren from GitHub, Andy Anatko from anatko.com. Our show today brought to you by Pebble. Hiring fast is one thing. Hiring fast and staying compliant across different countries, that's where things can get tricky. And Pebble helps solve that tension. P-E-B-L. Pebble makes global hiring simple through embedded compliance and AI-driven workflows. The Pebble platform takes the delays and guesswork out of going global, so founders and HR leaders can move fast without adding risk. Hiring abroad, it can take months when you do it on your own. But with Pebble, you can hire in over 185 countries, and you can do it in minutes. and have your new hire onboarded by Monday. Most companies treat compliance as something to, kind of manage around. By building a decade of experience directly into the platform, Pebble removes the fear of mistakes and the dreaded regulatory blind spots. Instead of juggling separate tools for contracts and payrolls and benefits and compliance, Pebble brings everything together in a single platform that integrates with the tools teams already use. And it reduces redundant tasks and manual processes that can lead to error and delay hiring. The result is a global team that's actually set up to succeed with accurate pay, real benefits, and the support they need to thrive wherever they are. Bottom line, anywhere is possible with Pebble. With global hiring simplified, founders and HR leaders can spend their time focusing on what and where comes next for their business. Pebble has a special offer just for MacBreak Weekly listeners. Pebble's normally $399 a month per employee. Frankly, already a no-brainer for what you get. But right now, there is a limited time offer on their site that makes it even easier to get started. Go to highpebble.ai before it's gone. That's highpebl.ai. Terms and conditions apply. Highpebble.ai. 185 plus countries. I want to get more into that agentic thing, but I think we have to move.
We have another 3 hours on that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well,
it's only getting more and more interesting, which is the fun and the tragedy of this show sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and this is, I'm pretty bullish about what Apple's done because it does make all this easy and straightforward for a normal user. But I'm also very aware that more and more people like Christina and me are using agents and are doing a lot of stuff that Apple probably won't ever do because they cross these silo barriers. And fortunately, at least right now, people are making MCP servers, they're making APIs and SDKs, they're making it possible to do this. So that we can create agents that know everything about us privately and can integrate with the outside world securely, and that's a very powerful proposition that Apple probably won't ever.
Yeah. Well,
do.
I don't. All my opinion is just that all Apple has to do is make sure that they doesn't wind up in a situation where when Google Photos first got its AI regenerative editing tools, and I could say, oh well, this dog in the background is like urinating against a tree, and it's kind of ruining this beautiful picture of my mom and my sisters. Circle it, say erase it erases and fills it with. And every time I would show that to somebody, it'd be an iPhone, usually say, why doesn't my phone do that? And that's the sort of thing that Apple does not want to ever happen. That's the sort of thing that Google does not want to ever happen. For someone to see one of their friends or family members doing something really slick, really useful they can immediately recognize this will simplify my life. It will solve problems or create opportunities for me. Why doesn't my phone do that? Right. And so long as Apple can stay ahead of that problem, I think they're okay. And again, hopefully they're being humble enough to realize that they didn't say that, oh, we think that agents are the wrong way to go and they're security nightmares and it's part of a reflection of how smart and how responsible we are that we're not talking about agents. I'm very, very relieved that they're saying, yeah, it's a great thing. We're not there yet. I do think they'll get there so long as they get there at a good pace with a reliable feature that people are expecting at the time when people are finally expecting to get this whenever they take the wrapper off a new phone.
Apple doesn't want, and this is why they're not in the EU, interoperability. They really like that ecosystem lock-in. The issue with the EU is the Digital Markets Act, the DMA, which says things should be interoperable. And Apple is, of course, never going to be interoperable. We just talked about it. They're not going to interoperate Siri AI with Anthropic.
Yeah. Well, sometimes
does that mean they'll never be in Europe? Or is the EU going to give in?
I don't think on this issue, I don't think Apple's going to give in. Because there are areas in which I do think Apple's just being dumb, okay, by not allowing allowing a non-Apple watch to have access to notifications and other simple things that are so simple and that are in full control of the user, saying, I trust this, I trust Garmin, I trust Pixel, I trust Samsung. Please, Apple, please let them have access to actionable notifications. That's Apple being dumb and being isolationist and trying to protect their monopoly or whatever. However, when it comes to something as profound as the pipeline of communication of all of your personal information through AIs, they are making a very good point that this is an area in which, yeah, it is unfair. It actually is unfair to these other companies, but you can't be. This is a line they don't want to cross when it comes to privacy, and I wish that they would come up with a way that would satisfy both the need for interoperability as well as the privacy and security of the data for their users. However, in this case, I'm hoping that they're going to err on the side of privacy and security for their users.
And John, you point out that losing EU is not the worst thing in the world. They're only about 7% of Apple's worldwide revenue. So
maybe,
that's for App Store.
Yeah, but I think that that's probably a good measure overall, because why would the App Store be lower than their overall revenue? I mean, it's possible that Europeans buy high-end Mac Studios that they never connect to the App Store at a higher rate than elsewhere. I mean, it's
very
theoretically
decorative.
possible.
They look beautiful on and off.
But you believe that Apple could leave Siri out of the EU forever?
I do. I really think, and I think that was the gist of Apple's rather strident news post on the keynote day. And as I emphasize, their public statements regarding the DMA and regulation around the world have always been rather diplomatic. It's such a perfect word for the tone they strike in public, which I think is the proper tone to take. And then off the record, when they have briefings for the media about this, they don't use curse words. They don't cuss about it, but you can see them thinking about the cuss words off the record.
There's a very full swear jar somewhere on Apple campus.
They do hold out hope, though. That newsroom piece did say Siri delayed. They didn't say denied.
Well, but it would take the gist that I got from it, and from they had I think there were a couple instances of it, but I was in a briefing last week at Apple Park the day after the keynote with a bunch of other people from the media. And the gist that they laid out there is, if the European Commission doesn't change its mind on this, I don't think this version of Apple Intelligence and Siri AI will ever come to the EU.
Now,
and it's a much smaller feature, but iPhone mirroring is now 2 years old and still isn't there.
Right.
I said it's because Apple wants to preserve their lock-in, but they say it's a security issue. You could say that with iPhone mirroring.
I think it's both.
Can I also say that Apple, although I'm on Apple's side here, Apple does have the responsibility to not just say, trust us, bro. They have to bring forward, here are the technical reasons why, and we will allow third parties to look at this white paper we've written. Don't trust us on this. We're not just trying to force people to, we're not giving the answer of, we'd really love your mom to buy an iPhone and replace their Android phone. There really are actual reasons that we have argued inside our own, within our own institutions.
They went to the trouble of designing something they called the trusted system agent to appease the EU, and the EU, according to Apple, did not agree to any of Apple's proposals. However, given the clear dangers to EU users and regulators' failure to acknowledge these risks, there's currently no timeline for Siri AI's availability in the EU.
Right.
So, you got to admit, it was cheeky for them to ask for an 18-month extension. It was okay.
It's totally cheeky, and that is gotten a lot of attention, and I think, and I have people saying that, well, that's clearly contrary, that's outside the law of the DMA. They can't offer an extension like that.
Right.
And I get it. But as I understand it, and again, this is a background briefing, I wish that they would publicize all of this, but my understanding is, at a first level, Apple asked, and I think they have a case, that the DMA doesn't say that this is against the DMA, that they could ship this version of Apple Intelligence and Siri AI in the EU and have the European Commission deem it as not being against the interoperability requirements of the DMA. There's nothing, the DMA is very vaguely written, to say the least, where there's certainly nothing in there that mentions AI or LLMs in particular. And this is where Apple and Google are in complete alignment, where Google just went ahead and shipped the integrated Gemini in Android in the EU, and now they're facing an inquiry, or whatever they call it, where the EU said, "Oh, that's not allowed." So Google took the do it first and ask forgiveness tactic, and Apple took the let's ask before we ship it, and was told no, that would not be compliant. But for example, and I asked people at Apple this, and at first they had some answers, but when I asked and said, explain this, they kind of started thinking and were like, yeah, I don't know. Which is, how is the current Siri, the one that you get today in iOS 26, how is that compliant with the DMA? You can't replace
Great
that
question.
with a third party. There's no other option to get the side button on your iPhone to go to a different voice assistant. The only difference between old Siri and new Siri is that new Siri works, but in terms of what it tries to do, it's the exact same thing. So I don't see how old Siri is compliant with the DMA either. I think Apple and Google have a good case, and Apple signed, like, I forget what they call it in the EU, but it's like, we've asked for comments, and Apple submitted their own comments in support of Google in the EU, that, hey, Apple wants them, is saying to the EU, what Google is doing with Gemini and Android should be permitted under the DMA. Not that we want you to change the DMA or add a specific extension to it or an amendment to allow this. Under the DMA, as written, law of the land in the EU, this should not violate it. That's the first ask. And clearly the European Commission disagreed. They're saying that Gemini's existing integration in Android is non-compliant, and Siri AI, as announced last week at WWDC, would be non-compliant in the EU. Second, Apple went to them with the trusted system agent proposal, not working code. But they sent engineers. It wasn't just marketing people. It was engineers who had designed the outline of it. Sent them to Brussels to present this 6 months ago, which is highly, we all know, and Apple emphasized this in the briefing, highly unusual for Apple to tell anybody anywhere in the world what they're doing 6 months ahead of time. But they went and said, here's our plans for AI and Siri. Here is a proposal. We think it should be compliant as is, but if it's not, here is our next plan, which would be to build this trusted system agent. Unfortunately, the briefing did not include any kind of technical description of what that actually is or what it would be like. But apparently it's pretty big proposal. And Apple estimated that it would take 18 months to build, but wanted the European Commission to say, if you built something like that, it would probably be compliant, or it would be compliant. And then Apple would go ahead and commission the engineering work to build it. And with the 18-month period that they were asking is, and if you allow the trusted system agent, how about you give us an extension and let us ship what we have now while we're building it? That was like the last thing on the list. And I don't think Apple really thought they were going to say yes to that. Sure. I think Apple was hoping they would either just say, yes, new Siri is compliant just like old Siri was, except it works. B, if they said no to that, that they would say, okay, this trusted system agent sounds like a good plan. If you could build something, and here's our suggestions to the outline, go ahead and build it, and however long it takes, hurry up. But when that's ready, you can ship in the EU. What happened is the EU said to Apple with that proposal, we don't judge proposals. Go build it, and then come to us with code, and we'll tell you. And with this one, Apple is saying, it is such a major project. What off the record, or on background, Apple described it as, in their estimation, would be more engineering work on Apple's side than all of the other things they've built for DMA compliance to date combined. The browser engine kit, the alternate app store support, the alternate payment support, all the other stuff that they've already built for DMA compliance. This project would be more than all of that combined. And they don't want to do that and then find out after they've done it that it still isn't compliant. That's why what they wanted was for the EU to say, build that and it'll be compliant. And they wouldn't do it. And so that's where things stand. That's why Apple can't even say, we think 18 months from now, maybe we could have something, because they're not even sure that they're going to go ahead and build it because
okay, that's good to know.
Why build it? Yeah, so it's interesting because, as you say, the DMA is so kind of vaguely written that it's up to the regulators to interpret it. Apple calls the EU regulators' interpretation extreme. They say Apple would have to give any virtual assistant direct access to users' private data and the ability to directly control other installed applications. And I agree with Apple. That is a non-starter. That's clearly an issue. I wouldn't want Apple to do that either. Whether I was in the EU or here, that no third-party AI should have access to all of that information.
Yeah, and this is where I'm doubly sorry that Apple plays that card so frequently. That we can't allow third party developers to link outside to their own websites, because that would be a compromise of customer privacy and security, and we're going to take a stand against that.
Yeah, they've kind of burned that bridge. Yeah,
and so when it actually is a valid argument, that's why I said, okay, well, now's the time here's the
it is valid in this case. It's completely valid. And I'm a big interoperability fan. I'm a big open systems fan. But in this case, I completely understand why Apple doesn't want to do that. I wouldn't want them to do it.
Both things are true. It's unfair to third parties, and it's necessary for security. Sometimes both of those things are absolutely true.
Yeah. Let's move on to some other topics besides Siri AI. There's a little battle going on. I'm wondering if John has any inside information about whether the folding phone that has not yet been announced will be shipped this year or later. Some rumors say it will have to be in 2027. One rumor mill adamantly says, no, it's coming out this year. What do you know about this, John? Anything?
I know nothing. I've gotten out of that game of trying to figure out what hardware's coming.
I don't do it either. Yeah.
But just so not talking to anybody at Apple, but just reading the rumors, it's the people who seem to get it right. I think it's about as close to a lock as possible that it's coming. And I think it's just the sheer scale of iPhones, and even iPhones that aren't popular compared to the others. Like, let's say this year, the iPhone Air, which clearly was not a smash hit. No. It's still, they've sold so many iPhone Airs that I don't think there was any way to keep its existence under wraps a year ago at this time. And I think, again, let's just assume, and I think it's probably a fair assumption, that this iPhone that folds, which I think they'll probably call iPhone Ultra, but who knows? The folding iPhone is probably going to be the most expensive iPhone because the folding mechanisms, displays are always among or the most expensive components. Folding screens are all more expensive than non-folding screens. Apple.
Can I say a sidebar? Motorola, which is the king of budget, of incredibly good phones that are incredibly cheap. They introduced their first folding phone, and it was $100 cheaper than a Samsung foldable. Yes, that's how expensive that component is, that even Motorola cannot crack $1,500.
Right, whose brand is sort of a high-quality phone at a lower price. Yeah. So let's say it's super expensive. It's still, it doesn't going to sell in high quantities. Maybe they don't think they're going to make many. It's going to be hard to get for Christmas, whatever. The rumors are so strong, and the clues at WWDC were like, hey, you can make extra widescreen apps in the iPhone mirroring app. Just in case, if you're wondering what these apps
if you want to run the simulator and see what your iPhone app would look like if it were suddenly and unexpectedly made wider.
They spent some time in the Xcode session talking about responsive displays as well. It's pretty clear where it's headed. They're not. I'm amazed they have been able to say it with a straight face without any little winks or nudges, but it's pretty clear what's gonna happen. Good. Well, I hope that's the case. Apparently, Samsung is actually starting to manufacture the touchscreens for the new MacBook Ultra, which implies that it might even be available sooner than later, which would be good news.
Yeah, I think there was 2 weeks ago that there was some supply chain reporter said that Samsung was targeting a 90% yield rate, and they'd achieved that, and so that meant that it was viable for this contract to go forward or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's and also people who are using, I don't know if you've used this, John, but who's using continuity on the iPad. I can never get these individual features
what's
right.
that one called?
But basically,
Sidecar.
Thank you. Sidecar now responds to touch on the iPad.
Yeah.
Which I it might be significant. It might not, because I thought that why wouldn't it do that from? There in 2000 you could buy like a touch screen on that you could add on so that you could actually touch as a USB mouse pointer. But yeah, there's a lot of snow on the ground and a lot of footprints in that snow.
Good. All right. That's pretty much it on the rumors, as far as I can tell here. So maybe we should do the long-awaited and much-vaunted Vision Pro segment.
Here we go.
What do you see? What do you know? It's time to talk to
John, you don't
Vision
have to
Pro.
dance. It's okay. We wouldn't have a Vision Pro segment if it weren't for Andy Anako, who found the one Vision Pro story today. Apple
I'm
Vision
like a
Pro.
pig with a truffle, baby.
You snurfled it out. Below that tree over there, Apple helped Vision Pro help Disney re-engineer a classic EPCOT ride. Apparently, Disney's
Best
been using
EPCOT
it.
ride.
Which one is that? What's your best?
Soarin'. This
Soarin'
one.
is fun.
Soarin' is a great
Yeah.
ride. That's what they use it for. Soarin' is actually freaking excellent.
So that's the one where you sit in these seats and they bring. It's like hang gliding. It was originally over California, but I think Soarin' now is everywhere.
Soarin' across America.
Yeah,
It's
Soarin'.
250th anniversary of what?
And,
The United
and
States.
they have
movie.
Putty as your pilot, and you go flying. So that's good. Are we going to get Soarin' on the Vision Pro? Is the question.
See, that's what I've always thought. Like that would be a killer feature of the Vision Pro. To be honest, would either be to like the Avatar ride at Animal Kingdom or Soarin'. Like these are the sorts of things where when I first used the Vision Pro, I went, okay, I don't want one of these things to sit on my face all the time, but this would be fantastic either on a ride or to recreate a ride. Like I could see it in both scenarios. Like if you could get it durable enough, have them actually, have individuals be able to use them on the ride itself because the screens are much better than what you're typically getting on those experiences. Or like let's recreate Soarin' at home. Like that would be great.
Or even just the ride content. Just yesterday, I was watching the Simpsons motion ride, where basically the Simpsons crew basically wrote an entire episode of The Simpsons, starting with the videos you watch while you're waiting in line, and then when you get into the 3D environment, like you're in the car, it's a continuation with all these jokes that are going through, and it's like it's free. It's already there. Just again, don't make. I don't have to like have the whole thrill ride. But I want to watch. When I was watching this, where suddenly like, hey, right through my mouth. He says, I want to see what that would be like to ride that car through there.
It's funny because that one made me nauseous. But then I went across the hall to the flying broomsticks at the Harry Potter thing, and I love that both of them you can put on a helmet. But the Simpsons are an older one. You're sitting in a little box.
Vision 3D.
Yeah, the Simpsons one is like 20 years old now at this point, which is really, really
it's not really as bad as you think because they say you can put your backpack on this shelf in the cart here, and it will be safe. But on the Hogwarts ride, you're sitting on a saddle and you're moving around. It's much, and I did not get nauseated.
I just think it's a shame when you have all this content that was built so beautifully, so seriously. Sometimes by Francis Ford Coppola, by George Lucas, by the Muppets, by Jim Henson. And the thing is, like, if they decide to shut down the ride, one of the in jokes in the Simpsons ride is that it replaced the Back to the Future motion simulator, and the opening scene is basically how Dr. Frink is responsible for the destruction of that thing. And it's like the thing is like I think that anything that's been created with such care, it shouldn't be allowed to die if there's a way to preserve it.
I agree.
And if there's a way to simply take that stuff and say, look, $5 or just, you know what, we're looking the other way, just like that, just like Apple does with a whole bunch of like old ROMs. Like, you know what, we're not going to litigate this. We can't give you permission, but we are not opposed to people running Apple Works on another system. And I hope that turns out.
It really is the sort of thing. These rides are preservable in an immersive way that like just, all right, we'll send a guy through with a camera is not. And the Simpsons one, I've been on that many times. It is oddly immersive for a thing that just kind of dips you up and down a little. But it's like a little, but for the most part though, it really would transfer very well. You would get no motion, but you would get something that a flat rectangular version of it wouldn't. Yeah.
Are you a Vision Pro fan, John? I don't know.
I am in an odd place where I'm a booster of the future prospects of the platform, and I barely use the one that I have over here, to a degree that every single time I want to use it, the battery is empty. And then I think I'm going to get another plug. I'm going to I have a whole socket of, or a whole wall of outlets over here to this side of my desk. And I'm going to have a dedicated charger just for my Vision Pro. And then eventually I'll have some other gadget that needs to charge. And I'll be like, oh, I'll use that one I'm using for the Vision Pro. And then my Vision Pro expires. So no. But I will say this too. The other thing I do, and I've done it, I think 3 years in a row, is my WWDC live talk show. We live stream.
Oh yeah, with Adam.
Yeah, with Sandwich. And then we have a higher quality. It might be coming out later today, actually, where you can go to the Sandwich Theater app and watch it in 3D. And I really thought, like 3 years ago when we first did it, I was like, well, this is like one of the first events live streamed immersively. By next year, I didn't think that this product was going to be a hit. I was like, but there will be more events, including probably from Apple, that are live streamed for the people who do have one. Nope. It's still just me.
Yeah. What surprised me is that they didn't, I know they can't necessarily launch a YouTube for immersive experiences, but I thought that, look, you've got this thing with all these cameras on it. I'm sure that people will want to make their own 3D experiences, even if it's just that, hey, look, here's what it was like at Ozfest this year, and I've got 10 minutes worth of video, and I'll be able to post it and share it with somebody. That would have been exciting. It wouldn't have justified $3,500, but $408 of that, that might have justified it if it had taken off.
You do get a lot of credit for doing the talk show in a Vision Pro with Adam Lissagore. I think that for 2.5 hours, that's above and beyond.
That was the longest podcast I've ever recorded. Maybe not by the clock.
By time I felt it.
Yeah.
How long until the lines around your forehead went away?
I was going to say.
Was that like a whole day?
I think like last week. I don't know. I mean, it was a very long time.
You can watch that on YouTube as well as this week's talk show. And then if you have a Vision Pro, you need the Sandwich TV app, right, to watch the talk show in your
Sandwich Theater.
Pro.
Just
Sandwich
look for theater.
That's it. Yep. And that, well, we got some extra content in there. Is your Vision Pro
Now you see, now you know, we're done talking the Vision Pro.
You're watching MacBreak Weekly with, it's wonderful to have John Gruber, the legendary John Gruber from DaringFireball.net, Andy Ihnatko, and Christina Warren. A couple of other stories. The UK government, I actually was very impressed with Apple's announcement of their child protection features. As you mentioned, the parental, what do they call it? Parental protection features, parental controls, which I didn't know, but you told me, or you mentioned on the talk show, are actually Apple's developers thinking about their parents.
Yes, originally.
This gives it a whole new meaning. But I was very impressed. I was especially impressed with the defaults. I thought that was exactly the right way to take parental controls. And to, I think, maybe bypass and around the governmental restrictions that are coming, not just in Australia and in many U.S. states, but now in the U.K., I don't know if it's going to be enough. The UK has announced they're going to ban social media for under 16s. Actually, Nilay said he didn't think this is going to be enough to keep the government out of the iPhone business. I really liked what Apple did, and I think it's much better to let the parents control it than governments.
Yeah, 100%. I can't imagine how, of all the things, if the fact that YouTube's included inside that ban, you're basically, imagine us in the mid 80s and saying, by the way, NBC and ABC networks do not exist. You will not be able to access either of those two networks because the amount of content that kids get through YouTube is like, I don't know how they're going to enforce that. That has to be a first step towards. Oh, and by the way, VPNs are also banned within the UK.
I was going to say you don't enforce this because the kids are going to figure out ways around it, and I mean, especially for things like YouTube. I mean, maybe you try to make it so onerous that nobody, that companies have to put in completely, in my opinion, draconian tests to try to find out users' age, which are completely defeating the point of any sort of privacy thing. And now these companies are collecting information that you really don't want them to have because it's not like they have secure servers or that they don't resell that data or anything else. I don't know. I mean, I think that all this stuff is just deeply, deeply depressing.
Yeah. Keir Starmer announced it'll happen as soon as next year, early next year. Will ban Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and X. Messaging apps like WhatsApp and Signal will not be banned. Romantic companion chatbots will be banned if you're under 18.
You can't keep us apart. Me and Sheila are in love. It's fake to you, but it's real to us.
As will, and I don't know what this means. I'll have to ask a Brit. Intimate functionalities will also be banned for those under 18. Yeah, this is
that domain available? Intimate
functionalities.
So no way. This
is why the birth rate is dropping in Britain. I just want to say.
Function.
But so Apple obviously would like to get ahead of this. Is what they're doing enough? Probably not, huh? Neil, I believe that governments are just going to go right ahead and do it.
I keep turning back to the comparison. I think I said this on stage too, but to the government's approach to end-to-end encryption, where they'll say they don't understand it technically, and they have a good use case where, okay, what if there are two pedophiles exchanging CSAM? Why can't you give law enforcement, just the good guys, a backdoor to their end-to-end encryption? And people, explain to them that it defeats the definition of end-to-end encryption. There's no way to have a backdoor just for the good guys. You can't do it. And what the government bureaucrats who don't understand it hear is what they hear, I think, is, oh, that's a lot of work that you don't want to do. It's hard. We'll just mandate it, and then you can use your nerd powers and make it happen.
Yeah, and we call that the nerd harder directive.
Yes, exactly. And I really do think, and with end-to-end encryption, it's a little bit simpler to understand because you understand there's an end-to-end encrypted chat between me and Andy is just between us. And if we add Christina and we have a group chat, we understand that these communications are only going between our three devices. And you can kind of understand that. And adding a third, another party, law enforcement or just bad guys, would be breaking the circle of trust. Parental controls is a little more nebulous because some of these things are like, oh, I just don't want my kid spending time playing Roblox or something. It's
right.
But
Apple has the functionality, the ability. Apple knows, Google knows how old you are. They have the functionality built in. Apple has the age intent where people can say, what age group is this user? And it would all be implemented through the gatekeepers.
So some of this is possible. Some of it's possible, but I think some of it comes down to the bureaucrats and the politicians wanting to say, we'll just make them nerd harder and have parents be able to say, oh, great, thanks to this law that makes Apple and Google and Meta and everybody else nerd harder. Now my kid isn't doing anything inappropriate or spending time in places I don't want them spending time on their devices. And that's magical thinking, and it's just not going to happen. Yeah. But I think some of these controls do seem better. And I think some of them, the knock is that a lot of what Apple announced last week isn't actually new. It's actually been there. But like Joanna said on stage with me, like it just didn't work. I mean, and so it's like, okay, the features that we've had, now they actually work. So if that's the difference, maybe that makes, it just doesn't absolve parents, though, from needing to take some significant amount of responsibility for what their kids are doing on devices.
Well,
right?
but that's who should be taking responsibility.
Yeah.
In my opinion, right?
And I think you can mandate that, and you could say, hey, if you set up your kid's device as a child device, then they have to get permission from the parent to say, use a VPN. And if the parent says, no, I don't even know what a VPN is, no. And that's it.
I like the functionality where the kid would say, can I go to this site? And the parent gets a pop-up on their phone. That's new, isn't it? That seems like
I think so.
Feature. Yeah.
And if it's not, it was so buried that nobody could ever, it never happened.
Right. Which was the issue before. I think the secondary issue was that you had third-party companies who were trying to build these better tools before, like what Apple introduced, which I agree with Leo, I think is great, that existed. And then they were very limited in how much control
and there were
they
privacy issues. There were all sorts
which
of
makes
problems,
total sense, right? But like this
you
is
had to use MDM, and I mean,
you would have to do that, yeah. But like there were a number of different companies who were trying to do those sorts of things, and you couldn't really do that unless you.
No, Apple should do it. Google should do it.
Yeah,
that's who should do it. And people say, well, the kid will figure out a way around it. Oh yeah, the kids aren't going to figure out a way around a social media ban in the UK. Yeah. The kids will figure out a way around it. Sure.
Yeah, it's just like with alcohol and tobacco sales, right? Does a 21-year-old age limit mean that nobody in any of United States or United Kingdom or any of these countries is drinking alcohol or smoking cigarettes before they turn 21? No. But do the laws greatly decrease how often that happens? Yes. Well, that's a win. And if you're waiting for perfection, no kids accessing anything inappropriate or spending more time than their parents think doing X, Y, or Z, you're going to be waiting forever.
Yep.
I think the difference, though, with like alcohol laws, for instance, versus what they're doing in the UK, is that there's not a database held every time I go to the liquor store and buy a beer, and then I have to give them my ID, and now it's stored on their server someplace. But now, because I'm an adult, if I'm in the UK, I now have to verify and give my ID to somebody who I don't trust at all. I don't trust anyone in the UK government. I don't trust any one of those companies to have a copy of my identification on their servers. I sure don't. So thanks a lot, guys. You've now created like an even worse honeypot for everybody who is of age to get hacked and have their identity stolen. Like, congratulations.
You know what my fear with this Fable thing is that at some point you're going to have to have proof of citizenship to use the top AI models. That's not going to be a good thing. That is not going to be a good thing. I'll tell you what is a good thing for Apple TV. Fox just bought Roku.
Before we move on,
sorry.
I have an update. I did check. IntimateFunctionalities.com is not available because I just bought it.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Andy.
As I've just
your
posted,
domain hoarding.
Fantastic. Did you get .net as well? Because, you're not a commercial enterprise. Okay. Very good. Fox has purchased Roku, the streaming service, for $25 billion.
Wow.
I immediately saw a number of people asking on Reddit, what's the next best streaming device? Actually, they were asking on our Twit forums at twit.community. What else should I get?
Apple TV.
Apple TV. There really is only one. Roku was the low price leader, though. In fact, they had
between
more.
Roku and Fire Stick, yeah.
Yeah, I think they said Roku has 100 million global households.
They have more.
But they bought the channel as well, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think
it's
you
all
get the
gonna
whole
become
thing.
TV.
It's
Do you want the channel?
Free channel.
It's all gonna be. This is just gonna be.
No,
look, on Twit we talked about this, and I think then the rumor was Paramount, and I was like, that will be the worst thing ever. This is slightly better than Paramount, but only slightly. Like now, it's just gonna be the Tubi TV, right? Like congratulations.
Right, yep. Fox plans to keep Tubi and the Roku channel separate. Mm-hmm. Fox also hopes to cut $400 million from the annual costs of Roku. So if you work for Roku, you know what that means.
I hope that doesn't mean a drop in the quality that I expect from Roku.com free streaming.
Yeah.
Love Island Canada. If I don't get the season 8 of that.
Roku has a 25% market share, according to the Wall Street Journal. That makes it number one. Number two, Samsung's Tizen.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All those Samsung TVs, 23% of the streaming market. I have a lot of Samsung TVs. I never want to use their streaming interface. Oh, Lord.
There are a lot of people who don't know.
They don't know any better.
My dad is one of those people. I've bought him so many. He's had a Roku. He's had a Fire Stick. He's had multiple Apple TVs. He uses the freaking Comcast box. He won't even use the built-in WebG. He has a very, very nice LG TV. I would much rather him use the WebOS apps that are built into that than the one's on the Xfinity box. But no, that's what he uses, and I can't do anything. I bought him 2 Apple TVs. He has them in 2 rooms. I can't get anywhere. So
it's too complicated, Christina. It's too complicated. By Waterloo, by the way, just purchased internetfunctionalities.edu. Now there's an opportunity. There's a business opportunity, I think.
That's good. I welcome the competition, and I will crush you.
I will crush you. I will crush you. All right. I mean, there's a lot more we could talk about, but I think we have pretty well covered.
One last thing just to mention.
Yes.
Congratulations, Apple. They won the Tony Award for Schmigadoon, which means that they completed their EGOT.
Apple's an EGOT.
Congratulations, Apple. Thanks for canceling the TV show and winning the Tony. That's great.
And it definitely seemed like the hardest one for Apple to pick up, right? I mean,
the Tony Award, yeah.
If you're a stand-up comedian, you can do a one-man show. I mean, you got options, but for Apple, that was going to be hard.
Let me get this clear. So they had a TV show called Schmigadoon. They canceled it. It went to Broadway?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Apple produced the Broadway version?
No, they owned the
But they own the
original
rights.
IP.
But they're listed as one of the producers because that's the way the Tonys work. There's like 800 producers attached to a thing. So yeah,
They were not on stage. They were not on stage. In fact, they were
John
called
Turnus
out.
didn't jump up.
No. In fact, one of the producers purposely called out and said, "Thank you, Apple, for canceling us."
Yes, I did see that.
They weren't ashamed enough. They weren't so ashamed of the show that they didn't actually put something on the Apple newsroom, proudly saying, "Hey, Apple's won a Tony Award."
Congratulations.
I don't blame them. If I won a Tony Award under any circumstances whatsoever, I would be pretending as though that was a wonderful thing. Well, because it's cool. It's a cool object.
There was one more story. The rumor is now that the new iPhone will have, at least the Pro, will have 12 gigs of RAM for Apple AI. That actually is a story that is going to develop, is what you can run the new Siri on, what you can run the higher end stuff on, which phones work, and so forth.
Yeah.
12 gigs means probably much more expensive, I would imagine.
Yeah. After the keynote, I was going through. I do not have a single important computer, including my phone and my watch, that is not 4 or 5 years old and ready for an update, because I've been waiting for a really good reason to update. And so it's like, as my decision making this year, because I'll definitely be buying a new MacBook in the next month or two, another new desktop.
Wait a minute, you're not going to wait for the M6 with the touch and the.
I'm gonna. Okay, I do not have MacBook Ultra money. I do have I do have M5 money. I do have wait until October just in case they pull up a surprise money. But the thing, whereas usually I have a metric that I've followed for the past 10 years. This year it is what is the most amount of system RAM that I can afford and still get storage that will work for me, because that's going to me in my mind, that's going to be the difference between getting another good 5 years out of this and getting 3.5 years in which you get everything, and then a year and a half where it's I really wish I could get that agentic stuff working, but unfortunately it requires at least 24 gigs of RAM.
Functionalities.com money starts to roll in, you might have more options.
You know what? I am going to be that optimistic. M5 Pro, Ultra.
I think it's fun. I do think it's funny, Leo, that for years and years, when people, because Apple doesn't like to talk about RAM in iPhones, they don't like to tell you. And it's and every year when they come out, it's like somebody will ask in the press and they'll say, oh, we don't talk about that. And then every year they'll say but as soon as we get it, we'll be able to know. So why don't you just tell us? And they're well, you go ahead and do that. And then we go ahead and do that. And every year it's, not as much RAM as people who watch shows like this were hoping for. And for years it was always, come on, look at Apple's margins. They could easily put 4 more gigs of RAM or however many more.
They could have.
And now this year, the rumor is they're going to increase it, and everybody's like, "How are they going to do that? These phones must cost $3,000, right?" Yeah. It's totally flipped from
you're right.
Come on, why are you being so stingy with RAM? RAM makes everything better. And now it's like, oh my God, how are they going to put 12 gigs of RAM in a phone? I don't believe it.
Well, it's funny because I think the OnePlus CEO said that now the cost of RAM is more than half the cost of the bill of materials for phones.
I read that.
Which is ridiculous, right? And so it's absurd. And it's, we don't know when this will abide. Now, my only question is, I feel like Apple probably, from everything I've read, they have their RAM prices locked in annually, right? They don't do it quarter to quarter or month to month like other suppliers do. But that had to have gone away. So I hope that they locked in like a year ago at the lower, rates, because otherwise I think I am worried that we are all going to be in for a little bit of shell shock when new phones come out.
I don't think they're going to raise prices because I think they see the prices as so inextricably part of the brand. So I don't think so. So I think that at least for the phone, but who knows? Maybe this explains why they don't have M5 Mac Minis and Mac Studios out yet. That they're like, well, we've got this much RAM and it's all going into iPhones. Yeah.
Well, maybe let me be more specific. I think that you're probably right in terms of like the base iPhone and maybe like the iPhone Pro. But I feel like this gives them an opportunity to have an excuse to have the Ultra and the MacBook Ultra priced even higher than they would be otherwise, because they're going to need to make up the margin on the higher volume products.
That's what ultra means, ultra expensive.
Yeah, well, it means,
Absolutely. Well,
for what it's worth, take the word of analysts for whatever it's worth, which is not rumor, but not necessarily gospel truth. But I think a month ago there was a report from a couple of different analysts who were saying that Apple is they're not going to be unaffected by the RAM situation. However, they feel as though Apple has enough cover that they're going to pursue a policy of we can put more pressure on particularly Chinese premium smartphones by keeping the prices exactly the same, even if they have to eat a little bit of margin to do it. In the long run, it'll be much better for their share.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And I also think, and again, it's a whole separate discussion, but I think that the line on Apple services is like a ruler draws it, right? It is like there's no seasonal up and down. And I think their confidence that they're going to keep making more on services gives them the ability to, we'll take a little less margin on the phones because of this RAM thing, and we'll be fine because we're not even, our overall margin isn't even going to dip because we're going to keep increasing it on the services.
Do you think they'll put additional AI cost into services beyond iCloud Plus? No.
No, and certainly not anytime soon. I think right now they're really just, please trust us. It's worth trying. Use it. They don't want to ask you for money. No. And I think integrating any kind of paid tier into the existing iCloud Plus tiers is obviously the way to go. I think Apple is a long way off from charging even $1 a month more for Siri. I mean, they have so much credibility to earn back. And I honestly hope their humility they showed last week, that maybe they make some commercials that are funny, like, hey, Siri's actually good now,
Kind of admit it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that could actually get people to be like, oh, maybe I should try it if even they're cracking jokes about it.
Maybe they get John Hodgman to play old Siri.
They're on the back foot when they didn't do it by saying, our users love Siri, and we're happy to say we've made it even better.
Yes.
Even they, you know what? I don't care if I drew the short stick. I'm not saying that, even on tape.
Right. That's a macro button in Pages when they write the script of the keynote. Our users love this. Now they're going to love this more. I think that they were like, Andy, yeah, they were like, how do we write this? I don't know. And they're like, we better call in the A-team of writers.
Well, speaking of A-teams, it's great to have John Gruber on the show. Wonderful to finally meet you. And, of course, Daring Fireball is a must-read. We talk about your pieces all the time. Really good journalism, and we really appreciate it. Christina Warren also here from GitHub, where she is... Did you mourn Fable? Did you get to play with Fable at all?
I did get to play with Fable a little bit, and it was great. It was great for the 2.5 days that I got to use it. RIP.
I'm bitter. I actually started a major project.
Oh, no.
Well, I wasn't going to pay the token cost for it, so I had till June 22nd to use it on my Max subscription. So I thought, well, I got 10 days. I am going to rewrite our entire Twit ad sales system. in those 10 days. And I got pretty far on it. They generated a questionnaire for the stakeholders, and it was understood the schema, it understood the old software, it had everything. And then they pulled the plug. It was right in the middle of it. It said, this model's no longer available. And I was, I thought it was me. I thought, did my credit card not go through? Anyway, you still have the good Copilot, Christina. You're good. You're golden. You're fine.
Yeah, and I still have Copilot with all the, I have all the other Anthropic models and all the OpenAI models and Gemini 3.1 Pro. But yeah, I mean, Fable was really fun for, like
it
I
was
said,
pretty good.
Like the 60 hours we had it or whatever it was. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It's like Crash Davis and Bull Durham talking about the 2 days he was 2 weeks he was in the major leagues. Just you know what, all the hotels have room service. You hit white balls during batting practice. You don't carry your own bags either.
How's the new website going, Andy Ihnatko, ihnatko.com?
It's going terrific. I want to thank everybody who's been signing up and visiting. I will say that I basically had the idea that, look, if the audience is this big by the end of the summer, I will be very, very happy. And it was just like 1 week for that audience. And so I'm very, very grateful. I'm so much so that it's like, you know what? I think I'll cancel like what I was supposed to be doing today and tomorrow and make those extra writing days, because it's like, I'm very, very excited. Thank you very, very much. I was not assuming that people would be interested in me like doing the blog again for real. Oh
no, I think
I'm
we all
very,
are.
very reassured.
Yeah. Very happy to see that. ihnatko. You're watching This Week in MacBreak Weekly. And we're so glad you're here, you club members. We appreciate your support. The club members make up about 30% of our overall operating costs. That's a huge amount. Without you, we would have to cut way back. So I just want to put out a little pitch for those of you who are watching live or at home to join the club. $10 a month gets you ad-free versions of all the shows. You get access to our Club Twit Discord. Turns out if you have a social network where people pay $10 a month to be there, the quality really goes up. It's really great. We also do a lot of special programming in there. That's where we did the WWDC keynote coverage. Keynote coverage will be in the club, but we also have Stacy's Book Club and Micah's Media Club. We've got the photo show is coming up this week on the 19th. Our AI user group in there. But most importantly, you're supporting independent journalism without any tie to any corporate interest. I mean, look, if Fox does want to buy us for $25 billion, I'm not saying I'd say no. But until then, your $10 makes a big difference. Twit.tv/ClubTwit. We thank you so much for your support.
We're all the grandchildren and great grandchildren of immigrants who would come to us in our sleep and throttle us if we turned down $20 million for any reason after all they did.
That's true.
In the Italian Alps, which is what my grandfather used to do.
A very good point. They would want us to take the money, wouldn't they?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Andy. For that, you get to start the picks of the week.
Okay. Well, this is a really fun feature in a really good app. Google Earth, you all know about it. It's basically the digital globe that you get for free. In the app version of it, the desktop version of it, it used to have it has a flight simulator, so you can actually use all this wonderful data and fly through cities and fly from Bangor, Maine to Fenway Park or whatever. They've just added it to the web version of the app as well. And it's not like these super intense flight simulators where you will, of course, crash for the first 3 months that you even try to do anything because everything is scientific and aerodynamic. It is more like the original Microsoft Flight Simulator of 1.0.
How do I launch it? How do I get it going?
Go to wherever you want to start off from. Go under Tools. Okay. And you will see a new option for Flight Simulator.
Oh, yeah.
And instead of a complicated flight yoke, it's just the arrow keys to control up, down, and your rudders. And then
this is probably not a good thing to
mouse
do. I think I just did a barrel roll.
The mouse is, if you try to use it with a trackpad, the mouse, I find it inoperable. There is actually again to keep the tone of the show, I had to ask Gemini, are there keyboard controls for this? So yeah, page up, page down for increase and decrease thrust, up arrow and down arrow for pitch up, pitch down, left arrow for roll left, right arrow for roll bank, and yeah, it's It's fun, especially now in my little coastal colonial fishing village. It's rather flat. It's rather simulated 3D. However, once you like go to a good city, it's like, you know what? I'm going to fly all the way to Fenway Park, and I don't think it'll let you land because again, it's not a simulator. It's a simulator in the weakest sense, in the sense that it's fun. It's more like an arcade simulator, but it is freaking wild, man, to just basically be controlling, not controlling like a point of view flyover with on-screen heads-up display, and just saying, here's what it would be like to basically buzz Boston Harbor, and here's what it would be like to try to. And unfortunately, it is
not good at this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Help me.
but I actually was getting better and better at it because unfortunately I came across this at like 10 p.m., which is like
I'm going to auger into Doylestown right now. Wait a minute. Yeah. Watch out. Here we go. Sorry.
It's a shame Spirit Airlines went under, Leo, because I think you've got Spirit pilot skills.
I got it.
The big problem is that it only supports it only simulates one jet, and it's a Boeing. So
good.
Well,
that's okay. As long as it's not a 737 MAX, I'm okay.
Exactly.
Flight Simulator, a new reason to go to Google Earth, which I actually haven't launched in a long, long time. You know, they have AI in it now. Wow.
It really is one of the most fun apps ever. It really is like when you went to your grandparents' house and they had like the big atlas and a whole bunch of box of maps, and you should be able to just imagine where you're going and say, oh my God, the terrain in like Peru is so weird. I spend so much time just basically browsing Google Earth, and it's just so much fun.
It's fun. Yep. Let's go to our guest, John Gruber, for his pick of the week. John?
My pick of the week is from my friend Adam Lissagor at Sandwich, but it's his new app that he's made with AI, which I think is super fascinating because he's not a developer. It's called Hovercraft. And the URL it's sandwich.vision/hovercraft. Just search the web for Sandwich Hovercraft. But basically what it is, it's an app for your Mac that creates a virtual camera. So you still need a real camera. But when you're in an app like Zoom or FaceTime or any other app like that, you can pick Hovercraft as your camera. And then on screen, you can show slides. You just drag an image. If you just have a photo, just drag it into the Hovercraft window on your Mac, and then it becomes a rectangle in your square. And then you can use Vision Pro-like gestures to like move it around. And Adam is doing amazing things really quick. He added support for, I wrote down the acronym because I always get the letters wrong. USDZ, which is the open standard for 3D objects. You can drag a USDZ file into Hovercraft, and then in your camera, you get the 3D object, and you can use your hands like a Vision Pro to like twist it around and move it back and forth. Really, really cool. You can finger paint on the screen like Picasso, like just there's a mode where you can make a drawing on screen. All really, really cool and fun. If you don't want to use your hands on the camera, you can just use your mouse or your trackpad or something like that. But the hand stuff is very fun. It's $19 for one Mac, $29 gets you a license, one-time fee, not a subscription. $29 gets you a license for 2 Macs. Go to sandwich.vision/hovercraft.
Nice.
Very, very cool app. And it's one of those things. It may or may not. It's like I feel like Apple should Sherlock it because it's like, why don't all the cameras let you drag images in and drag them around the screen?
Yeah.
Very nice. Hovercraft. I'm installing it. Soon you will see things floating over my shoulder. Christina, your pick of the week.
First of all, I love Hovercraft. I'm gonna, as somebody who has to present a lot on screen, I'm gonna use this in some of my future meetings. My pick is as Parachute apps or Parachute backup for Mac.
There is a certain commonality to all the picks here. We got Flight Simulator, we got Hovercraft. Now you're jumping out of the plane.
Parachute,
so this is
right.
good. Yep.
This one's great. So this it's recently purchased by new owners, the same guys who bought Kaleidoscope, which is the best diff tool on the Mac. They bought this, which is a backup, iCloud and iPhoto backup app for Mac and for iOS. And it's a one-time purchase. And I back up a lot of things to iCloud, and I just kind of trust it. But that's not really a great strategy, to be honest, because things do get corrupted, things do get broken. You don't know where things are going to go. And iCloud and iPhoto is a a black hole, which is great. That's by design, but is also annoying if you're somebody who would like to have reliable backups. And so this is basically just a utility that'll basically let you back up your iCloud documents or your photo libraries, including your shared photo libraries, directly to a NAS or another folder or another hard drive or whatever the case may be. There are a few different modes how you can like set it up. Basically, you can have it mirror and download like the full version each time. An incremental backup, which would be more similar to how like something like Time Machine works, or have it be in sync so that it's exactly what you have in one is the same as what's on the other. It doesn't do two-way sync, so if you delete something on your local drive, it's not going to delete it on your
That's
iCloud
good.
side,
Yeah.
which is nice. But it's well designed, and it's a one-time purchase, not a subscription. And so, Parachute.
Very nice. Some excellent apps. We appreciate the picks. And we appreciate you, John Gruber. Thank you for joining us this week. You didn't have
Thank
to
you
wear
for
a
having
nerd
me.
helmet to be on the show, so this shouldn't have been a horrible 2.5 hours anyway.
Yeah.
I don't need to tell everybody daringfireball.net, but maybe I do need to tell you .com also works.
Yes.
Great to have you, John. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it was a lot of fun.
I'm not going to say fly, Eagles, fly, but, I will climb up a greased flagpole for you anytime.
Yes,
Go Birds.
exactly.
Christina, thank you so much. You'll find her at github.com. Andy Anatko's new website is IHNATKO. We do MacBreak Weekly every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. That's 1800 UTC. You can watch us in the Club Twit Discord, of course, but also on YouTube, Twitch, X.com, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Kick. We stream on all of those after the fact. On-demand versions of the show available at the website, twit.tv/MBW. There's a YouTube channel dedicated to MacBreak Weekly. A great way to share clips with friends and family, help spread the word about MacBreak Weekly. And, of course, the best way to get it is to subscribe in your favorite podcast app. That way you'll get it automatically the minute we're done. Thanks for being here, everybody. We'll see you next week. And now it is my sad and solemn duty to tell you to get back to work because break time is over.